If you didn't catch it before, this is going to be a long one, but this is the intervention that CIG is holding in response to what happened at 4.8. And I think this is a response to how much the community made noise about it. So I'm not saying that we control everything, but I do think asking for some better communication on this is probably resulting in better communication, thank God, because I think everybody is wondering what the heck's going on. So without further ado, let us jump into this conversation. It is June 18th. We're about to watch Jared Huckabee, Benoit Bouzejour, and Jens Lind talk about Star Citizen's problems. I think there was like a whole bunch. Yeah, there was a bunch of behind the scenes Twitch stream. Why not? People who want to jump in and get a little curious.
Because I've never known you with brown hair.
Yeah.
So.
I like that. That's nice and friendly. All right, but let's get into it.
Every quarter for the last, since the big change, the beginning of last year, we started, the February of 2025 and stuff like this. We've still got that show, and we're still going to do a bunch of that show. But we just put 482. We just put 482 out yesterday. I've got you. We're live.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, it started with the...
There isn't even an introduction. That's when you know it's real.
An attempt at a bug fix a month ago. So with this 4.8 release and the way we've been doing patches this year, we have 2 streams when we work off from the working set. We have a base stream that we use for the base release of 4.0, and we have a hotfix stream where we bring all the continuous changes along. So there was an attempt at bug fixing something on the Idris that was actually creating some performance issue somewhere else that was checked into that stream, and nobody saw it, and it went through. So we've been on the hotfix stream now for 4.81, now going to 4.82. In 4.82, we went back to the base stream, which are supposed to be at parity at this point, except additional content, because we've added additional content in the patch. That change was included. And so what's supposed to be a routine update.
Sorry, I got to rewind. I missed a little bit of
that. That was checked into that stream, and nobody saw it, and it went through. So we've been on the hotfix stream now for 4.81, now going to 4.82. In 4.82, we went back to the base stream, which are supposed to be at parity at this point, except additional content, because we've added additional content in the patch. That change was included. And so what's supposed to be a routine update became a massive, wide sprawling issue because basically the Idris was no longer compatible with its persisted copy. And so what that would do is players have in their ASOP terminal.
I think it was just the Idris being jealous of the Odin, and so it was causing problems.
Mm-hmm. They have a version of the Idris that's from 4.81. This change, which was not supposed to be in the stream at all, gets in there. And so now the game server is expecting another shape for this. The game server has a series of checks and balances for this, but he's the last banker in the chain. Mm-hmm. And so for him, if the schema is incompatible, he's like, there's data corruption risk, I'm out. And so...
Who's he in this analogy?
he's the game server,
okay.
Basically, right? So the game server is trying to spawn the Idris, wherever it is, right? So that's called the async spawn chain. And so as he's trying to resolve the object containers for this and to materialize the ship in game, he comes around an incompatibility, and then there's a hard check for this, because if we let those through, if we disarm this check, for example, then the game server might corrupt ships or might be twisting data, and then we would go wider than that. And so the game server would crash. So
there's all this. So there's all this stuff that we...
I am most interested then in knowing if anybody has noticed a difference since the Idris was taken out. Because I believe I saw that the Idris was completely removed from the game yesterday, maybe? Is the game working now? Because if so, that would make sense if it matched up with what he was saying. But even given what he's saying, I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say about like why that couldn't be rolled out immediately. I'm guessing it's because they couldn't find it immediately. But it just seemed like this just can't happen, especially not during a giant sale. Oh, it was added back later in the day. I see. But it is working now. It's really smooth. Okay. How about the what did they say? Star Citizen server health or something? E-health? No issues detected. I want my degraded performance. I don't. Look at all these degraded signs. Well, that sounds good. We'll see if that lasts. Glad they've been able to figure out what the fix was and get it implemented.
Have to work on and fix.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff that we are working on and fixing. And yesterday, in a patch that was just supposed to add, the two new, GATAC ships and some hot fixes to some of the more persistent
Bring back the
issues.
odd fixes from the odd fix branch and move forward.
Completely unrelated check-in to the Idris
Yes,
somehow made it through validation or missed validation.
correct.
It's like this, got in, and now the server, which is still built, the persistence records, which are still built on 481,
Yes.
and expecting a 481 version of the ship.
Also 480. because
480.
They're compatible.
Really? Okay. So it's expecting a 480 version of the ship, got a 482 version of the ship without knowing that there was supposed to be a difference, and just went, all right, I'm gonna head out.
That's right.
You did the SpongeBob meme.
Yeah, and so every time an Idris would be attempted to spawn, that server in that region would crash, and then restart, and then try to load the Idris again, and then crash again. And so as players were unstowing more
that's what
Idrises and more
okay.
shards, more servers got affected, until you reach a point where now the ops team is in the background. They're like lighting all the fires, like the Rohan,
You were
calling the Rohan.
I saw you online at like 3:30 this morning.
Yeah. And so we're looking at this, and basically we start cordoning off shards, because at the beginning we're not sure what the issue is. So we start cordoning off shards, and what happens in this case is like the more shards are getting offline, the less capacity we have for players that are either entering the game or shard hopping. We have a lot of people shard hopping, and so what happens is they hit the dreaded 60,012 error, which means there's no capacity in your zone. There is capacity, but we've had to restrict it in the meantime. And so we took a hard decision later in the night to prevent players from spawning Idrises temporarily, just to kind of stop breaking other shards. We brought more shards online to keep that playing.
When he says,
and then we basically,
when he says later in the night, do you guys know what time he's talking? Is this yesterday? Is 2 days ago? Is this like back when 4.8 came out? I don't know what he's specifically referring to.
went through and manually rectified. That's what we call progressive maintenance. When you see that in the status, it means we went in and we did a drastic measure to basically fix the Idrises that were either spawned in shards or still left in inventories to make sure that they had the proper schema. And so now we know that all the Idrises are fine. We've lifted that temporary stoppage for that ship. And so now we're back. That's what happened.
Completely out of left field. Absolutely unrelated to all the stuff that we're working on, the stuff that the patch was supposed to be and whatnot. This is
Cabret trays being spawned by some subcomponent in the Idris cargo room.
and it's not even
I do wonder if something like this would show up in PTU. I'm not saying that skipping PTU is what caused this. It's not even a new ship. But like, oops, god dang it. Apparently that button resets the whole video. That's good to know. But like, how do you stop that from happening? Besides just double checking, triple checking, everybody checking the work and not rushing.
Some of them we can touch on a little bit because I've made some notes to talk about gameplay systems here and why they were affected by some minor infrastructure issues that turned out to be massively contributing to the perception of the patch. So I'll talk a bit about that in a bit, but basically we've been firefighting since 4.8.0.
We can tell.
I want to.
It's like this. It's been obvious, and I feel bad for the people who have been fighting it. But it still feels like this got this. I'm glad that they're coming out and talking about this, and I can't wait to hear what's gonna come from it. I'm gonna try not to step in before they actually say stuff.
Touch on one thing because we just had one of the cuff moment about the Idris last night, right? But 2 weeks prior to that, we had another downtime patch that needed a lot of rectification. So the people that the teams that run the online group were hard at work on this maintenance, and unfortunately another one of those unwanted check-ins came in during that 4.8.1 cycle, where in an attempt to fix the VGL flight suits that was missing hands and feet, another check-in came in that removed subcomponents of this flight suits, but not just removed them from the flight suit, deleted them from existence from the game, and that's not something that you can do in a minor patch. And so clearly that's two instances in this patch where changes and check-ins should have been validated and prevented and went in, and then after that became an infrastructure problem, because same issue here. If somebody was wearing the VGL flight suit and referred to these entity classes that were actually representing, I think, the nozzle and the front pack of the suit, then the game server would crash. And so we had, again, to do percussive maintenance to remove those items and fix that. And so that highlights to me a massive issue with how we validate check-ins and how we get changes in the game across persistence until we have full forward porting compatibility on the persistence layer, which we don't have at the moment.
But will we?
Thank God this problem, at least as far as from what he's saying, did not come from the persistence system, from the database having problems from PES. Maybe that has its own things going on, but in the back of my head, the worry with stuff like this, especially when it kind of persists past a couple weeks, I'm always worried that it might have something to do with their actual database. Because you guys may remember it was 2 falls ago, I think it was like September or October of 2024 maybe, where Chris had to come out and say, yeah, we got PES in, but the firm that's handling the database management is not up to the task, and so we need to find a solution. And I don't think there was ever a follow-up from that about finding the solution. I think they did. But it was kind of like we were all just sort of left wondering, is it good? And so anytime that this stuff persists, it gets a little nerve-wracking. I'm glad that it's a human error as opposed to something wrong with the system or the tech.
Game changer.
Yes.
What's your perspective, Ian? I'm keen.
Well, it's live service. You're always running, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're always running. Like we're talking about forward patching. If we'd been behind closed doors, you would have done that, right? No one'd ever seen the game until you've done that piece of technology. But that's not who we are. We're always running, and that's what makes it really, really exciting to work here as well, right? Because we're putting ourselves out there all the time. But if I look at this specific case, you're saying like, right, we have checks and we have contracts on what you can and can't do in these substreams that we've already released, where the data management is super, super strict. And obviously now we've invalidated them twice in a row, so it's time to look at like how do we really add that extra layer of protection.
Why is this happening? Why? Look, it's. I know. I have to be. I'm allowed a lot of latitude here. I'm allowed a lot of latitude here, and I appreciate it from the people that I work for. But this is really frustrating. Yeah. How is it? I understand that, Rich Tyler, our senior game director, went on stage at CitizenCon, 2 years ago and laid out the roadmap to 1.0. And I understand that through 25 and through the first half of 2026, we have made some legitimately ridiculous strides towards making this game actually the MMO it was always trying to be. Yes. If people who follow this project 2015, 2016, 2017, a lot of the years before, it's very easy. It was very easy to have questions like, where are they going? Like where are they going? Why is this like that? Why is that like that? It's like we would often see questions. Has anybody ever played an MMO before? Do they know how to do this? It's like this. And there's a reason. There's a reason we made a major pivot. We made a major pivot at the end of 2024. In 2025, we went into this content mode, and we said no new features. No new features. We're going to focus on content while we shore up all these things. And when I was you and me sitting here more than a year ago, it's like this. And in the last year and a half, we have tripled the amount of content that we've put out compared to 2024, compared to 2023, 2022, all combined. Like the amount of content we have put out in the last 18 months is amazing. And the people here are working their asses off to make it as good as possible. I don't doubt the intentions of any human being here. I don't doubt the dedication of anybody here. We're not here today to apologize for anything. I know that we're all working as hard, except Steve. We're all working as hard as possible.
Bender?
But why does this happen? Why is this happening? I can't sit here and do this job and feel good about my job without asking you outright, why is this happening? If everybody is working as hard as I know they are, and everybody is working as dedicated as they are, and everybody is as talented as I know they are, why does something like this still happen? Why has it happened twice in the last 2 weeks?
Because we lost Harambe, dude.
To me when it's talented, not you.
I know. I think there's a part of that which is that we're transforming the game. We're still transforming the game into an MMO, right? We're still in the process of taking a game that used to run on a single server and now obviously a server mesh, which that's working, but the game systems need to expand as well. And if you add the content pressure on top of that, right, of getting content into the game, releasing it at the same time, stabilizing it, hardening it, and features that come in and do the inverse. New features come in and they destabilize the systems. Without stronger guardrails that also need to evolve with this, that's where we ended up. And so I think that, to be honest, I think at this right now, we're outpacing our ability of verifying everything that's being added to the game, and this is where we need to put a lot of our energy at the moment, is to put in those guardrails so that, you know, the check-in that would cause this crash issue, right? Those are identified at this point. And
That's what I was saying, man. They gotta slow down. I hate saying that too, because good golly gee, I really want the features to just be in so they can make them work together. But there's clearly more devs are needing to go and work on Squadron, and or maybe there's just too much work coming into Star Citizen. But if we can't catch everything going into a live build to the point where it destabilizes the game like this, then yeah, I think things are moving too fast.
It's all about adding these validation frameworks to prevent that from happening and keeping the data stable and fully validated. Now, that sounds, well, why didn't you do that before, right?
You're not saying that there were no guardrails in place.
No. There are guardrails in place, but
they're not keeping up with the pace.
Correct. Yes, exactly. Like we create more content and more features than we have time to add guardrails in to prevent these cases, right? You know, an example I could give on something unrelated to persistence, right? But you know, we're at the point now. We used to we make a weapon, we make a ship, that's it, right? Now we have a team making weapons. They balance the weapons. They design the weapons. They work in that realm. They have guardrails in there, right? They know what to check for, outliers, data sets, you know, how power is distributed, etc. You go to the next team. The next team is making ship components. They have their guardrails. They have their approaches. They have their things, right? They balance it out. You have another team that's making recipes and dismantling, right? They have their own guardrails, their own systems. You have another team.
I want to touch on something that gets discussed in the chat. The idea of AI being used in the development, and not gonna lie, I don't think there's much not using AI for game dev soon enough. Like if you're coding, we can forget the term AI. LLMs and predictive technology is going to be used in all kinds of IDEs and any environment where you're building a program. That's just how it's going to be. So I think the idea of saying whether or not they use AI is arbitrary. It's more about how it's used. It's undoubtedly going to have some kind of hand in what you're doing. Like when you're writing in Microsoft Word at some point, there's probably going to be, you know, the spell corrector is AI. It's not just some program that detects little things here and there. And yeah, so I think that they're going to have to find ways to make use of it efficiently. And it's not necessarily something to just say, no, don't use that. Just maybe don't let it, you know, decide whether a patch goes live or something.
It's making economy. They add those things to shops. They add pricing. They make sure that that's balanced, and then they move on to another team that's adding this content to loot boxes. Right now, we didn't have that a while ago, right? And then mission rewards added in there. all of these have validation, but there's no holistic validation across, right? We're at the point now where all these systems communicate with each other all the time, right? And crafting has changed the game quite a bit on that area, right? And so that translates into more weapons being created, more content being created, more missions giving more rewards, and all these things need to be validated together, not in silos.
Is this why in 4.8 there was the thing where there was a weapon? I think it was a ship weapon. I can't remember specifically, but you paid 20,000. I'm pulling a number out of my butt here.
Sure.
You paid 20,000 to buy the ship weapon, but then you dismantled it and you got like $80,000 worth of materials and
that you could sell in one area.
That you can send. So people were just buying the vendor thing, and doing
right.
And you're saying that's because the weapon and the pricing and everything for the weapon was validated by one team in one silo, if you will.
Yes.
And then the validation of the crafting and the breakdown and stuff was done in a different one.
Sure.
And there wasn't something that
transversal to check all of that. And also like we're definitely now post 4.7 in a realm where just human validation is not enough, right? And so a lot of game design data is typically, managed by the team.
Oh my God, they're working with the Xi'an. I knew it.
But I think that we're way past that, and we need machine validation for everything because the rate at which we build it and the amount of technology we're putting in is just too fast for validation to keep up.
Okay.
And we can't just rely on endpoint validation, because in this case it was machine validation that caused the error.
Yes.
And stopped it from corruption.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like
But
the machine validation has
humans.
Correct. Yes, exactly.
So has to come earlier.
So for validation, let's just stay on this
Y'all
topic
know how
here for a bit.
I'm complete open disclosure. I say it during my streams. I take the transcript of these streams and I do run it through an LLM so that I can get some of the things that I talked about or remember some of the points that came across that I might need to cover later, or because we have tech problems and somebody needs to record it down. It's useful. It can be very useful for crunching through data when you need it to.
People are going to, as talented as everybody has, as skilled as everybody is, and stuff like this, mistakes are going to be made and the wrong thing is going to be checked in and stuff like this. And the game is growing at a scale. Like I've been here for more than a decade and stuff. I know it's a Jared meme drink anytime I talk about how long I've been here. You can just see it in my hair now.
Dude, Jared looks phenomenal. Okay. Like if you look at the videos that he was doing for CIG 10 years ago, he aged wonderfully. All right. Hair aside, I mean, we all like a little salt and pepper.
I am so incredibly proud of the game right now. It's the last 18 months have hands down been the best 18 months that this game has had since the PU went online in 2015. And anybody that says otherwise is being disingenuous. They just are. I'm being hard with you guys here. I'm going to be a little harder. I'm being hard with you guys as well. It's like the last 18 months have been phenomenal for the progression of Star Citizen. It's our daily average users are up. Our concurrency is up. The content is the best content we've ever put out. TSG is finally realizing we finally have coordinated space combat in our space combat game.
He's got one caveat to that statement. The best content coming out. They are missing a follow-up to the Kovalex Gundo mission. That's like the one place where I feel like they still have not been able to come back around and actually one up what they did before. That's such a good mission. Miss it.
Is this just but it sounds like we're moving fast and we're moving fast and we're doing a lot. You said the guardrails aren't catching up. How do we I get machine validation. I get you got to build some stuff. Is that all we can do? Is that make me feel better about how we're going to fix this is what I'm asking. Because if I feel better about how we're going to fix this, maybe there's a reason for people watching to feel better about how we're going to fix it.
Sure.
It's just a validation issue.
Sure. So it's a problem we've known about, right? And we've been trying to solve, right? And so more recently, there's more changes that have been coming from the engine side to give us a framework for validation. When I say framework for validation is that game designers can participate in this, right? It's not like, oh, they need to hand it off to an engineer, and the engineer is busy and he can't do the work, and now the validation is not added, which is the mode that we've been in the past, right? And so we've been in the process of building a validation framework for all game systems and all pieces of data stored in the game that can do queries across all data, whether it's, hey, I have a mission in this location that requires this, that pays out this. Is that an outlier compared to, And so being able to do cross data queries across the entire game, which is not something we've had before, which allows us then to just express these checks, find outliers into like mission payouts, find outliers into how, if we go back to the example of the gun is for sale at this location at this price, it's dismantleable into these components that can be sold at this location, that exchange value is too high, right? And so creating these validations will become part of the design work completely with this framework, which will allow us to have all these guardrails. On top of that...
Sounds like Benoit is leading his way into figuring out how to make quantum work without Tony.
We've got the more technical validation, right? So the two issues we got in 4.8 related to modifying ships that were already distributed in the main patch and removing entity classes, for example. Both of those things already have lock checks right now. That's the first thing we did when we discovered them. But we're going to keep adding more of those compatibility checks. Now, 4.8 also has the beginning of database patching. So in 4.7, we didn't have the full ability to persist all the crafting properties on weapons. So if you crafted a weapons, all the modifiers were not necessarily going to persist through LTP, right? In 4.8, we have introduced in the backend patchable serialized variables. We didn't talk about it much because it's kind of mixed into the crafting system, but basically we now, in the schema of a component, which stores the data for something, let's say it's a weapon, right? And I have the modifiers for it, let's say elongated nozzle, faster damage rate, whatever. These values, we now know which one of those values is patchable, right? And then we're able this way to persist them and patch them in the next release. We also determine which ones we store when you stow it. We don't stow all variables, which used to be the case. And that's the foundation for us to keep working at what we really want to achieve, which is a forward patchable data set. So that now these, even if the ship team goes in, changes all the serialized variables for a ship and rejigs the whole object container layout for a ship, that will be able to live migrate your ship to the new version without crashing the game servers in the meantime. So basically embracing this movable data set. But that's tricky to do. Obviously, we've been at this for a long time, but 4.8 has the beginning of that for crafting properties.
He has been talking a lot about the imprint system, how things in the game get saved to players, how the ownership system works, how you could transfer ownership. So this does track with what he's been saying over the last 6 months. I mean, we just watched the episode he did back in February last week, and we watched the one he did in September multiple times. I think both of those times he talked about those issues. I think that was also like the first time I've heard anybody reference serialized variables in one of these videos since like 2019. It's a throwback.
Right, that's great for allowing us to better manage when somebody checks something in that they didn't do. But I'm talking about what are we doing to stop the check-ins that aren't supposed to happen? Sure. Like through validation.
It's pre-validation, right? The one I call this validation framework I'm talking about is pre-check-in. Okay. Right. It's something that I'm working on the game. I'm going to add a new gun and I'm going to price it this and I'm going to make it super powerful, right? Well, that would flag. Exactly. I could not check that in, right? The system would go, wait. You need some authorization before you can check this in because of these reasons, which currently we don't have something like this. That's cross-checking.
Dang.
Right? Obviously, in each silo, yes, but not
people
with.
Can just
is this something? Is this something? I have to ask you the one question here. Is this something that we're talking about that's a 2027 thing? Are there parts of this at least that can go in? Is there hope for this? Yes. Sooner rather than later.
We need this yesterday.
I'm aware we need it yesterday. But
no, we're working on this right now. To get all these checks and balances in place. I don't know if it will be like a 4.9 kind of thing, but it's happening now.
Okay.
Because everybody around the table knows now. It's clear from the 4.8 experience that machine.
This can't happen again. Yeah. That's fantastic. I love I love a priority. I love a little bit of urgency with it.
Validation is required across the board.
So why isn't this just, let's tackle this from another angle. Why isn't just throwing more QA at this the answer? Why isn't this just hire 500 more QA people and this gets fixed?
Not enough crayons.
I suspect you probably have an answer for this.
Wait, no, that's Fasten.
In this case, it took the situation of like the data, how the database on 48481 was, and with the new data from 482 to create the situation. And that's not something that the QA environment has. So wherever we do, we as a technology group would have to come in and at least give them that. And then if you put your 500 QA on it, then they would probably, one of them would have spawned an address. But without that environment, you could put as many as you like on it. No one would ever have discovered this situation.
PTU for the win. Let's hear it, boys. The players, we pay to be broken. Let us do it.
This is just too far removed. And I think that's so come back to the large data set, right? As you have a large data set, you just can't scale in manpower alone. You need something that scales way beyond that.
And I suppose if you just hired,
Dude, hold on. Hold the phone, okay? Because I'm pretty sure I got some footage for this. Oh, my hard drive's back, everybody. It only took 13 hours to transfer. It was like 1.5 terabytes of stuff. But it looks like I finally got my hard drive back, so I should be able to actually search for this footage. Let's see. They had something they were working on for something like this called the Cloud Test Launcher. This was meant to allow them to spin up virtual clients that would test things in the game. And I don't know how much they've used this. I'm sure they do, and I'm sure this doesn't quite hit the things that they need for what they're talking about. It's obviously different, but I do wonder whether this had any impact, because I don't think we really heard much about this after this, which was 2022. Yeah, this only does so much, of course. I would love to hear more about what it does do, though, because it does feel like there are problems that we do encounter that might be solved by these people just being spawned in to test out like concurrency problems in areas, or like what happens when you spawn a certain ship in somewhere over and over and make them fly off into the distance. Like, those are the examples they used for this. And I thought it was a cool idea. I just don't know how much they've used it, since they haven't really talked much about it since then. Jens alludes to what they have. Okay.
500 QA people. That doesn't mean there's 500 requisite programmers that can all take the stuff and fix it either.
No, I think they would meet some frustration with their output, and our ability to tackle it would certainly create a separate set of challenges.
But also, what's frustrating with this situation is that we've done multiple patches where this just worked fine.
Oh yeah, we've been on this. We've been putting out a new piece of content every 2 weeks since the beginning of this year. Last year we moved. For 2024 and before, we were on a schedule of one patch every 3 months, and we didn't. I think we actually hit every 3 months once in the 5 years that we were on that cadence, from 3.0 to 4.8. I can't remember which one was January last year. We were trying to do a patch every quarter, and we actually hit the quarter date maybe 1 or 2 times in all that time. But so it was 4 patches a year.
Well, I mean, you could say 317 was stretched through 3 quarters, but they released a few different patches for 317. They were decent size.
Most basically is what we were doing. And then in 2025, we, as part of this major initiative, we switched and we went 11 patches. Yeah. We went 11 patches in 2024. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record. The content that was in those patches is some of the stuff I'm most proud of that their team here has ever put out. But we were able to do that because we pulled back on features. We pulled back on features, and it was content team. There were a couple features here and there that would sneak in and whatnot because we need this for that and other thing. But for the most part, it was all content. In 2026. We now switched to, and anybody that's been really paying attention or following the development would see this already. We've switched to a bi-monthly patch where we put out a major patch every 2 months, and we do these 2-week content drops in between. So every 2 weeks, there's a certain thing gets turned on. People who have been in PT, who have been testing, they tested this aspect, and then it wasn't there in the patch, and it goes, because it gets turned on 2 weeks. It gets turned on 2 weeks after that. It gets turned, and that was to help with engagement throughout the year, to give people more things to do, to keep people more interested. It's one of those things that you do when you're running a MMO. And that's been great
Just
up
laid it
until
out
the
there.
last 4 weeks.
Literally, that was the strategy that we've been saying, right? They just release stuff to try and keep people playing so that people keep playing and buying ships. It's not
That's
keep it
worked.
playable.
Yeah.
And so it's. I don't want to harp on this. I don't know how much of this is my own personal. I'm stuck on it, or whether this is
Jared's definitely channeling his man of the people voice for the show.
But it seems like we know what we have to do.
We have to solve the process for sure.
We have to solve the process. We have to solve the process. We have to build more tools. We have to scale our validation to match the rate of content that we're doing.
And the complexity of content too.
Right, because this year we also turned on features. We turned on the feature spigot this year after pulling back on it in 2025. I think I can't tell if I've been messing up my years this whole time. All right, how confident do you feel? How confident do you feel that you've got a handle on this?
I think we know what we have to do. I think it's going to take a while to get all of these guardrails in place, right? But in the meantime, I mean, we just have to respect the rules that we've set forward in the meantime, right? So that while we can't machine check everything this second, and to be honest, I'm not talking about months of work here on these validation frameworks, right? But it's about putting in the ability for every team to contribute guardrails, right? Which right now, it's a bit splintered, and so we need to bring this all back together. So I'm confident that especially the errors we just talked about, right? Like releasing a piece of content that crashes every server on launch, or twice, right? Or evident misconfiguration of items or costs or recipes, right? I'm confident that will solve the issue, that those issues will no longer occur as long as we respect the validation and nobody tripped them off, which, that's the next battle.
The validation issues.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we can eliminate that.
All right. So for the last 35, 40 minutes.
I can understand why this is like kind of shell shocking to people who started playing after 4.0, because it is quite a different change. Anybody who played between 3.0 and 4.0 is super familiar with this kind of development, but this is definitely back to that style. And they haven't used the tech preview as much as I'd hoped to avoid the instability. But it really does feel like we're just like right back into the crunchy, painful bits of building a game, as opposed to the content enjoyment part of that was last year.
We've been off
which
the
I'm cool with. I want
program
features
a little bit. The issue that went out, the issue that happened with 4.8.2 yesterday, because of a validation issue, I didn't feel like we could go into the program that we had originally planned without addressing it. It was just, I was very frustrated, and sometimes I abuse my position here to do this. So you're laughing. I'm the one that's going to get back and see if my bosses are still happy with me or not. We do have a lot to cover, a lot that we wanted to cover and stuff, and we're going to start getting into that stuff now. I hope watching you'll forgive the diversion, that you'll agree that it was worth it. I think there was some very useful stuff there, and I do want to say, I have to say this. This is me personally saying this. He goes, it was an issue with a ship yesterday, but the ship teams around the world, there's a team here, there's a team in Austin, there's a team in Montreal, have been some of the consistently quality delivering teams of this project for years and years and years and years and years. It's easy. It's the last couple weeks have been a bit rough, but it's like, where would we be? Where would we be without the ship team? So it's like, lest this seems like we're coming down on the ship team today, that is not my intention. They happen to be in the hot seat, yesterday. It's like this, but this could literally happen to anybody,
any team. Yeah.
And it did. It happened. It was a whole nother team 2 weeks ago. Sure. And if we don't get these guardrails in place, it'll be a whole nother team 2 weeks from now. Yep. So So
Star Citizen community is like, yeah, we wanted guardrails 6 years ago, please. I get I can see the jokes writing themselves about that, but it's important to remember that CIG is a business and that they have had a lot of shakeups in the last 2 to 3 years in terms of the directors, in terms of the C-suite, even middle management. They very well might be coming across the issues that were built under other people that hadn't been solved because they came in and needed to do other things. I'm not making an excuse, but I do realize how much more complex the project can be if a code base is being handed from one person to another, or games design in general, and the functions and procedures needed to make those designs actually become real can get thrown into craziness with that kind of shifting going on. And we know that kind of shifting is happening. We see the financial reports. So I don't want to make excuses for them, but I also do feel like they're at a point where, as a company, they're starting to coalesce around a pretty straight goal. Obviously, Squadron 42 is that goal, but also just like making sure that the game, the development teams are running like an actual development team. And over the last couple of years, we've seen that as the teams were built out, and some of the things that those teams that were built out to work on actually started to be worked on in the game, as opposed to just being shown in ISC over and over again.
I can't.
For me, the takeaway is human guardrails are not enough.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I just didn't want it. It's unfair to make it seem. It's unfair to make it seem like the ship team hasn't been absolutely killing it for years and years, and they still are. So, desync. Let's talk about
desync.
Nobody's ever going to say yes to being on this show ever again. Benoit, I put you on the hook to write a big old write-up on desync, and I know it's being worked on. I've seen the draft, and it's being worked on between every other initiative. Time spent writing is time spent not actually fixing things and making processes better.
Also, we got a couple guest stars in it that I'm hoping will make a difference too.
So that's still underway. And it's more like it's when we're done with it, it's going to be more like one of those. It's not a design brief. That's not the right thing. But kind of like what you saw with the gameplay guide. We're going to break it down, and I promise you, it'll be the most educated thing that you'll ever see from a game studio on what it is and what it isn't, and what causes it and what doesn't cause it, and stuff like that.
And the particular
hefty statement to make, Jared.
Particularities of our game architecture.
Yeah.
Also.
But that said,
I look forward to seeing that whenever it happens.
When 4.8 went out. I started with 4.7. 4.7 was great overall, but there's a reason I had to call you and ask it. There's been this mounting desync for the last several patches. It starts out small and it gets bigger. It affects some people more disproportionately than others. There are people that I have talked to, whether at a Bar Citizen or just reading the chat here today or in any other show, where they're having a virtually unplayable experience. And then there are other people who are like, that's not my experience. I'm having, I'm having a wonderful time and whatnot. Without just reading the entire doc that we're doing, I can't get past this show without talking about it at least somewhat. Yeah. What do we know is causing it at this point? And what are we doing to resolve it? Just a simple question.
Well, so what we know about right now is that there are some meshes. When I say meshes, I mean a dedicated game server inside a shard that are running way below FPS spec that we want, right? And so we don't have a handle just yet about what is actually causing it. We do have performance captures, and we're tracking at least 6 to 8 very specific optimizations that need to happen. One of them is within the area component, which is used all over the engine. Area and zone component, they kind of go in hand, but because we're pushing more content, right? The hierarchy trees of the game world is much bigger. So there's more areas, more zones, more subdivision, more. There are some areas of that where if you add a lot of entities in those that enter or exit these areas, there's, the engine provides the listeners to see track entities entering areas or leaving areas or zones changing, right? And obviously there's concurrency constructs around this to prevent one thread from accessing another thread, right? And so just keeping it simple without diving too much into the low level, which we will probably in some of our desync areas. But there's lock contention in the area component at the moment. In some places, there's lock contention in some areas of the game. Well, I literally mean area, like, you know, if there's many entities in this spot because of the way it's configured, we're seeing like basically FPS drops in those areas. And so we're tracking about, like I said, 6 to 8 major optimizations that we're trying to get in our hotfix channel, right, to try to get this FPS back up to the spec that we want, which is above 20, you know, across the
server FPS.
Server FPS, correct.
Somebody's going to take that clip and say, "Oh no, Star Citizen's only looking for 20 FPS in gameplay and whatnot."
No. And it's important to note that, like, when a server is running low FPS, it doesn't mean that it will create desync, but especially when you're interacting with entities that are simulated on that DGS, AI characters, NPCs, then you're going to perceive desync because the source is slow at creating its output, and you know the traffic goes from your game client to the replication node, replication node to game server. Now, if game server is running slow, at the beginning of the frame, he's taking the state from the game, from the network to the game, and applying it. At the end of it, he's applying the changes back to the network, right? If that loop is slow, then your client's going to predict something, and then that prediction will get corrected the next frame, and that will create a rubber band, right? And so that's the gist of why there's desync in general.
Why does the client have to predict?
Because if he doesn't predict, then you're going to be at the tick of the server, and you'll see, like,
even if it was running perfect, you'd see it in an FPS, like, because your need for it to be, you know, so responsive is too high.
Is this so? All right. So the meshes inside the shard are certain ones are slowing down.
Correct. It's not widespread in all areas.
Which is why some people are in there having a great.
I'm not going to tell you which areas. That's what you're asking.
I got to ask the obvious question. Then, at least it's obvious. It seems obvious to me. Mm-hmm. Is this related to the ship cleanup or lack thereof?
That's one of those things that we're looking at, is how aggressive or not the ship cleanup is actually happening. That's one of the things we're looking at. Yes. Because
you can watch a Twitch stream or look at an initial council report, and you'll see. I want to say dozens and dozens, but I feel like it's even more. Yeah. You know, bricked ships everywhere, because, you know, with the insurance changes and whatnot. Sure. You know, bricking these ships and whatnot. Is this this viably part of what it is? Is this
in part? Yeah, that for sure doesn't help, because the more entities are replicated, the more the server needs to do every frame, and so that contributes to this. So yes,
you can usually find it when you look at a server that is performing great. It usually has a
larger
vehicle population.
Really need ways to gameplay wise clean up this game. It's crazy because we've talked about it, they've talked about it, they've shown it in ISC, the idea of using an SRV to tow ships out, the idea of getting, like, there should be a system that applies a movement contract to a ship that makes you bring it to some place in space. Then when the ships are brought to that place in space, the game should be able to detect that and then make a salvage contract that anybody can take and go into that space. Like, you should get paid for throwing stuff away. And they've talked about it, and they need some kind of way to start getting rid of entities more, because they always keep coming back to this problem. I just wish we would get it. I want to be a janitor, man. I'm trying to mop the floor.
Listen,
the server that is performing great has a larger...
No, a server not performing so great tends to have a slightly larger vehicle population, or a very large active population. That can also happen. In general, just a lot of everything. We're quite a heavy game, entity-wise. Yeah. We want to avoid getting to the sort of size that we were in Stanton before we went into meshing. That was consistently difficult to manage.
Yeah, but if we're already, Stezik is like, fix it. Super helpful, dude.
Oh man, it's so easy. We're done. It's a subject.
You know what, Stezik? I honestly, none of us had thought about that. That's all right. We don't even need to do the rest of the show, do we?
Yeah, I know that there's been some changes related to how we perform entity cleanup. So unattended vehicle cleanup used to be a separate system, right, that ran on its own. That's been merged into what we call the density manager, which is basically an engine functionality that will look at overpopulation in clusters of areas that obviously designers have control over. For example, we want to make sure, like the exit routes for hangars are cleaned up, and so these are, have active cleanup zones configured, right? That's designer controlled. Now the engine will then after that apply the logic on the volume, determine, there's too many of X in this area, and we'll start popping stuff out, right? He's going to do the cleanup. Now for ships, the unattended vehicle cleanup system used to be separate. Now it's been brought into the density manager, I think end of last year, something like this. So it's been a while. And this one tracks whether there's passengers on passengers on a vehicle, and will, based on a certain timer configuration, and the values are different depending on the areas, will either stow back the ship into the originating inventory or destroy it, depending on if it's a player-owned ship or if it's an AI ship, depending, right? Now, it does look like maybe there's a misconfiguration in key areas that are leaving ships there. So we don't think the system is incorrectly functioning. We think it might be inaccurately configured in some areas. And so that would allow a very popular area to just accumulate ships like crazy, right? And so that's what we're looking at right now.
Are you able to clean
exhausting.
up? Are you able to differentiate between? You obviously mentioned a ship that has a person on it. That's great, but a ship that doesn't have a person on it but is still a viable ship versus a destroyed husk versus a bricked ship from the inventory. You're able to distinguish between and set timers for.
I'm not sure if the density manager will have a modifier specifically for bricked or not, but it can see it.
It does, or it will.
It will. Okay. It will eventually.
Yeah, if it doesn't,
it will eventually.
And
it's less about timers. It's more about density. It's sort of trying to say you have overpopulated this area. So it's less about like that ship has been there for a long period of time. It's more like there's a lot of ships here.
Yeah.
Let's remove one. Let's figure out which one is best to remove. For an unattended vehicle, does have a timer as well. So you kind of have these it's sort of like we talked about validation. You start with a timer, then you start adding intensity, then you start sort of building up these views of the world to kind of understand which areas are problematic. Like, the entrance to a hangar, we have to be super strict.
Yeah.
There's I like that, because obviously if there's just some random moon out there, it would suck if a spaceship that crashed out there got cleaned up because it was out there for too long. Like, if there's nothing else bothering it, then let it stay. This is going to be crazy when they bring in Starchitect. There's going to be entities and assets everywhere when they're trying to put 300 plus points of interest on a single planet. Like, imagine how much more load the game is going to be under when they implement Starchitect. They have to get this figured out now. I don't know how that's going to work. They're going to have to use a lot more servers for their mesh or something.
The place, as we're talking about this, something that pops in my mind that I think is also, in our process, now not even development process, but let's call it live operations of the game. We're very lean in terms of our live operations at CIG because we're in development, right? And so even though we do run a live service, we try to run a really lean ship, right, on that side. And so we don't have an army of site reliability engineers that are looking at like every aspect of like, Shard 25 has an overpopulation of ships at Jackson Swap in, between this time frame, time frame. Like we don't go in that depth, right? And so we track overpopulations across all shards, right? But we can't go granular into this. But that is an area where we could improve this and detect those things to better tune these values. Typically right now we will tune the density manager values every patch or every hotfix, but that is a slow cadence compared to how you would react if you see, oh my God, on every shard this location is loaded, let's affect the density manager change right now. Right now we don't have the ability to do that live, and that's a problem. That would improve the game quite a bit.
There's folks in the It would. I don't want to dismiss that. There's folks in the chat that are like, just make the brick ship salvageable, or give towing mission stuff. Those are all.
They are salvageable, as far as I know.
Yeah, and the towing missions, but it's those are all game design and mission design stuff. That's not anything that the tech. And even then, a solution that requires entirely player. It relies on the players entirely to solve is not going to get us where we need. I don't disagree, and I know it's the intention. They're supposed to be salvageable. If they're not, they will.
Yes.
They will be. It's just having towing missions to take them away and dump them somewhere is a great idea and stuff like that. But that can't be the only thing. There still needs to be a technical solution to clean this up. It's the reason I asked.
Sorry
the
for
reason
giving,
I asked if it could separate everything is because
giving the perspective to people that I don't think the game should be able to clean stuff up on its own. That'd be kind of crazy.
I don't think all of them are salvageable. I'm trying to remember an old conversation right now where there were rules about why this one could be salvageable and this one.
I know
there's
there's been changes related to this as well recently.
But like it's in my head, I'm just like, why don't we just disappear every brick ship right now until we get a handle on this? Like just crank the cleanup on bricked ships that we know don't belong to anybody. Just like they get to exist for 1.5 seconds and then they're gone. It's like
I'm just imagining the Reddit post after that. My ship disappeared 1 second after
a brick ship. But the ship only gets a brick ship.
Bricked.
A brick ship is they're back at their ASOP terminal and they've reclaimed it. So
yeah, but then the game
why can't it
thinks your non-bricked ship is bricked.
vanish? Now I'm certain. Whenever I go off like this and whatnot, and it sounds so simple and it sounds so obvious, and then I get back to my desk and I've got an engineer or something goes, it's not that simple, Jared. There's this and that. There's that dependency and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just a layman moron who had a very simple idea. But it's hard because I'm no different than half the people watching the show. It's just there are times when something seems so easy and so obvious, and it's like, just do that, because that's what my head was screaming that whole time. That's where I was going. Just until we get a handle on it, destroy the brick ships right away.
I always say, if it was easy,
Jared
it would have
hates
been done.
salvagers.
So by that, you have to assume there is reasons that makes it not easy. And it's usually like the complexity in the interactions. Like Benoit talked about, you sell a gun, and then you deconstruct it, and then the material can be sold somewhere else for something else. These kind of complex interactions between lots and lots of different systems are usually what stops us from doing something that from a tech point of view is literally a flag in the database that says that's bricked, I can treat it as garbage.
Yeah, there's this thing. It's what was the example? We had the example. I have to look back in our chat. There's something in the 481. It was the one of the old features for the hanger module, for the. It's in your module. It's in our chat. It's in our chat. Yeah, it's one of the issues. And I said, dude, we need to remember that. It's in our chat. When I said we need to bring that up. I can't remember. But recently, one of the things that flummoxed 481 was an old system. It was an old system from like 6 or 7 years ago that hadn't been touched. That some new piece of content touched for the first time, and it didn't work. I can't remember. It's just one of those. It's if making games were easy, they'd be done. I mean, pivot your. There wouldn't be a studio that closes every week in the last 2 years. So 4.8 comes out.
Yeah, there's been other issues. We talked about the catastrophic ones, but there's also other tangential issues.
We've got a section coming up where we've pulled the dashboard and what folks are working on. I'll get to that in a second if that's where you were going. I want to stay a little bit more into 4.8. So, think of how I want to do this here. We put up a thread. We collected a bunch of questions. We pulled some of that. Some of that's affected. We've used that to inform certain of the topics here and stuff. When you go through, okay. If you had to put, I understand that nothing is simple. I understand that there's probably 14, 15, 16 underlying causes that all contribute to this. But if I ask the simple question, what changed in 4.8 that affected server performance so much? I'm just on like raw server performance.
Sure.
Whatever. What's the thing that comes to your head? I'm gonna get both of you on this.
Sure.
Here, so don't think you get out of this. It's try to make
For me, it's behaviors. So, there's one thing about running a game server, is that it's kind of an organic behavioral system, right? And so you can have a game server with a version of the code, a version of the data running a certain way, and then players start doing something different, and that completely changes the performance profile. And so I feel like in 4.8, most likely my hunch for these 6 to 8 like performance issues that we're looking at, it's related to some imprint changes. So the way people use ships, leaving brick ships behind, are there more claims, than before? Are there other egregious issues that showed up that are creating more claims that would affect, the amount of entities on the server? Or is there a malfunction on, for example, the density manager cleanup that is leaving items in place? Or is there just people are going to a location that's configured to be very loose on its density, and it's somehow the location that people have decided to go to in this patch? So sometimes the performance profile of the game servers changes just based on behaviors, not on like, we changed something.
So you're blaming the backers.
No, I'm blaming the features that cause behavioral changes. And so that, for me, that's what screams. That's what comes out of it for me. And you're talking raw server performance here.
Yeah, I'm not talking just the raw server performance here. What are you thinking, Jens?
I mean, it's hard not to just parrot what you just said. I mean, it does feel like when I think of 4.8, there's nothing there I can go, yeah, that those gameplay changes we made could have caused it. The only thing I can think of is we did performance improvements, but there is a large change in how we handle vehicles.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't there a huge change to the entity system? Like this was a part of what Benoit was saying they were working on in the last time he was on, was like they're working on something big with the entity system, and it was going to come in, it was going to change item recovery, and that was the big feature of 4.8. I guess it didn't cause a problem according to what they were saying, but I'm surprised that isn't something they would consider as maybe a possibility of having done that. Didn't they create their own engine for this game? They've edited another engine. They have edited the crap out of the CryEngine to the point where it is its own engine, in the same way that Dunya is different from CryEngine, and I don't know, all the different freaking engines that are out there are just bastard children of other engines. But in doing so, changing CryEngine to Star Engine, it is not made for an MMO or a lot of multiplayer stuff, so it's just really struggling with some things.
I mean, the changes with the imprinting and the insurance system and stuff. Yeah. So the way that
they literally just said
insurance system
and the lifetime of vehicles.
You mean the changes with the imprinting and the insurance system and stuff. Yeah. So the way that the life of a vehicle in the universe changed, both its lifespan with the bricking and stuff like this, and the way that players handle them because of the changes that we instituted. Yes. I want to be clear. It's so you're bringing it back. You're bringing it back a big chunk of it, not everything, back to the number of ships.
I mean, that would be based on what I know of that patch went out there. I just don't see I don't recall there being any larger changes on the gameplay side. I feel like could explain it.
Yeah, we're not talking about their. I want to be real clear. It's you, folks watching. You have a lot of experience with me, and you have a lot of experience with Benoit. Less experience with Jens here. He's not saying that there are no bugs. There are no bugs. It's like we're talking about raw server FPS things. A bug does not impact server FPS. The freight elevator eating your cargo does not affect server FPS and stuff. The question I asked was what is affecting the raw server FPS, and that answer is they're trying to find an answer specifically to that. If it sounds like we don't know the answer, quite honestly, we're still working on it. It's Somebody in the chat said, it sounds like Jared's frustrated. Of course I'm frustrated. These two guys at the table are frustrated. Quite a lot of people are frustrated. I say it over and over again. We're having the same conversations you guys are having just 3 weeks earlier. It's like this, there's this concept that game development is game construction. You're just supposed to have all the answers and you're supposed to know everything and everything's supposed to be figured out before you do it and stuff. And just the reality is that's not how it works. I'm not talking
I feel like I'm back in 2023.
The entire industry. I'm talking about how games come together. I'm talking about programming. Quite honestly, it's discovery. It's discovery as you go through it. We always figure it out. We always figure it out. Like I could sit here and just gush about the quality of the people that we have here. It's like, when I go to a Bar Citizen, people always ask me like, is it hard to go out and do this? What I'm doing right now. It's less than 12 hours after a patch went out and was totally borked and whatever, and you've got to go out live and put on a face for the project and whatnot. Is it hard to do that? After 3.18, I had to do the thing. After the freight elevators with Race for Stand, I had to do the thing and whatever. Is it hard to do that? And the answer is no, it's not hard because of the people here. I believe in the people here more than anything. It's when you get I spend more time with the people who work here than across teams than most people. Everybody's working on their work. My work is the people. So it's when I lose faith in the people here, that's when you'll stop seeing me. But it hasn't happened in 12 years. It's not going to happen anytime soon. I love the people here. And they're working on it. If they haven't figured it out yet, they will figure it out. So you've already got some tremendous
for sure.
leads.
And I think to be honest, like on server performance, the 6 to 8 issues we're looking at now are definitely the source of the problems.
Do you want to just enumerate what the 6 to 8 issues are? You mentioned it. You've mentioned it a couple times, and it's just why don't we just use this opportunity?
Of course. I don't want to deep dive into each of them because
just give me top level.
It's a bit intense if we go down that route. But there's navigation system dispatching of tile configuration changes on planets, which affects how AI use the nav mesh on planets. So there's a performance call out on that is costing us a chunk of frame in the servers. This is purely based on the servers we know are affected by this problem. There's
a lot of digging.
Yeah.
A lot of digging through a lot of data.
Yes.
To find the sort of common culprit that are going to make a meaningful impact.
Yeah. No,
honestly,
exactly.
it is hard to. I mean, you guys know. Yeah, literally in the exact moment as I speak, I'm responding to you guys in chat. It is very hard to watch a conversation happening in front of you that you want to take part in and not say anything. And they're probably seeing hundreds of messages flying past talking about what they're talking about and wanting to follow up. And I can't even tell you what the answer to it is because clearly I struggle with it too. I get distracted all the time. But there's some kind of balance you have to hit of responding and not responding to the point where I understand why he feels the need to say these things. Oftentimes when you're in the moment and saying these things, you don't know if it's the right or wrong move, but you just kind of got to keep going. Otherwise, you're going to sit there staring at the camera, making no forward momentum.
This is like cross-linking a lot of things. There's... this is a pet peeve of mine that I keep pushing on, and we're going to definitely resolve that from a software point of view. But there's an entity spawner in some of the areas that are affected that are coming in and out of streaming and respawning their spawn set every time.
This is the NPCs that just go, it just spouts out.
And one example, I have multiple others related to this. That's one. The area component we talked about. So what we call register with external systems is a phase when the components are a component or an entity is coming online when it's streaming in. It needs to register with external systems. That's a notorious area that is an issue on multiple components. This one is from the area component is in that place a problem.
So the first two are NPC related.
Correct.
This one is...
This one is more engine and let's call it area configuration related. This one bleeds into the zone lock that we talked about earlier. So those are two, area and zone lock. So this is really tied to the amount of content in the game and the complexity of that content in some areas. Because we're also making more and more complex scenes.
Right.
Like Space Station and, the content we've put out recently, whether it's TSG or Rockcracker or there's a lot more complex layouts in those elements that contribute a lot to this, and so those are part of that. The ship cleanup, is another big one that we're looking at the moment, which is the source probably of the other two, which is the amount of registered entities that have either MFDs and or the flight system active.
Entities that specifically have MFDs?
Yes.
So it's an excessive number of MFDs.
Yes. Yeah.
Why isn't MFD so?
Well,
I
we
see
don't know
people say that MFDs sometimes slow down their frame rate a ton. Are MFDs really the main bad guy in Star Citizen?
specifically. I bet that if I went into that area and I looked, there would be a bunch of MFDs that are somehow visible. So that's been these components have a visibility aspect to it, where if you look at it, it's going to replicate for you, but if you don't look at it, it doesn't. Might be a malfunction with that. We're not sure.
Right. So the ship is breaking, but the MFDs are still visible.
Yeah, it could be like broken ship MFDs. Like we've seen weird things. Like everybody knows about the graveyard. Mm-hmm. There's been other graveyards in other areas, right? So there might be a new one we haven't found yet, where there's somehow MFDs end up there, right?
So you have a couple AI NPC related things. NPCs and the way they interact with the surface of worlds, planets, and moons. Yeah. NPC spawners, these things that load, outload, and then respawn their entire allotment of AI when they're already out there. So you got some NPC stuff. You've got some location stuff. The locations are getting more complex, and the area system is not properly culling them.
Yeah, it's an optimization at this point. Like, the functionality is correct. It's slow.
A lot of it, yeah.
And then there's the ship specific one, the cleanup stuff, and then there's some raw entity stuff that we also suspect is related to the ships, because the ships have the most entities.
And one final one that is fire. So there's been some ships catch fire, and depending on the size of the voxel grid, we've seen the area physics properties of how the temperature system interacts with fire actually needs a big optimization, and it's costing us frame time. Where that's a combination thing, because internally we can't reproduce it, but we see the cost on some of the game servers that are running slow.
Okay.
So optimization issues are really hurting them, but I do wonder, we won't find this out for a long time because they don't need to be optimizing a ton, but can you optimize it enough for it to be good? Or is there just stuff that is literally too heavy for it to work in the game?
So these are the top 8 ish kind of culprits to just raw server performance. We can optimize these 8 things. We should see big gains. I wasn't going to say big, but I'll let you say it. Big gains in server performance.
Big gains.
Now the thing with everything with optimization, right? It's a fog of war, right? When you
fix that, that's what was slowing it down. Then you find the next thing, and
you get rid of the elephant, and behind it is another one.
It's the 7-Up can that was slowing us down. The Pepsi can would have been slowing us down the whole time, but the 7-Up was doing it first.
It's
so the Pepsi
cup.
never got a chance to slow us down.
Know it's the coffee cup.
You optimize 7-Up, and now Pepsi's like, my time is here. Yeah. I can screw you over.
I can now be the one on top.
The choice of a new generation.
Yeah.
That's how old I am. Did you guys have that campaign here? A bunch of children. There's only one nodding head over there.
The same properties apply to crashes, right? Typically when we do like stability checks on game servers, which by the way, other than the 2 big issues that we've had, the baseline stability for 4.8, outside of these 2 events of the missing entity classes and the Idris problem, overall stability has been in a really good range overall, and so we've been happy about this. Other than now, the stats are terrible because of this, so we'll have to take a look. But the same properties apply to crashes. So when we look at top crashes, you're like, oh, we just have to fix this one. It's super high frequency. Then we fix it, and then oh my God, there's 3 more, right? And so it's a fog of war. Optimization and crash stability are like fog of war activity.
Glitch Hydra.
Yeah, you've got 7 now. You know what those are. We fixed them. It might be the end of it. It might not be.
You can get clusters as well, and that's the same on the performance side. We might be looking very, very closely at the servers performing poorly, and we might be fixing things that help those, but that doesn't help at all to the other servers, because they might be running into completely different issues. Like there might be something that's happening specifically on those servers that's unique to them, that brings them to that low rate, whereas the rest of them don't benefit as much from that.
It sounds like doing like home improvement, or like you would go in and you're like, okay, I know I've got this leak, it's ruined my water pressure, so we're going to go in and we're going to change this pipe, and then you get in there and you go to change the pipe, and then you see that the wall's falling apart because the water had already been spraying on there. So then you have to call someone in and take care of the wall. But then you find out that after taking care of the wall, for some reason the power is going out in this section. Whereas it's like, One problem leads to another one.
rate, whereas the rest of them don't benefit as much from that. So you always have to sort of look closely at the details and react to those, but proactively try to look at the big picture and sort of take you sort of where are we going overall. Once we fix that cluster there, how do we get all of it to sort of benefit from a smooth ride? Zero desync.
Just a ray of sunshine, yeah.
Yes, that's it. I'm just
We want
just bringing
smooth
the
as butter.
Yeah, it's gonna be all plain sailing.
I wanted to touch on in my notes I've got, because there was other issues in 4.8 that come from other optimizations that we've done and or other improvements that also contributed to some perception on the patch.
Okay.
So there's one thing that we're battling on the game side is that we mentioned how we're transforming the game from one model to the MMO model, right? And that means scaling systems. When we say that, we really mean transforming those systems to be service powered, right? So instead of being all in the game server and it's all good, right? We transfer these things to be service powered, right?
So the server no longer has to run transit. The server no longer has to run.
In part, right? It could be transit, it could be other things, right? Like for example, missions had a part of the mission system needed to be pulled out of there to be able to have server meshed missions, for example, right? So there's a lot of work behind that to basically dissect some services and move them to some game systems and move them to services. Now, interacting from the game client with services that are on cloud infrastructure is kind of a different discipline than being a gameplay programmer doing a gameplay feature, right? Let's say I'm working on the main character, the actor in the actor team, like Jens, for example, and I'm doing a feature around that. But my world is kind of self-contained to the actor. If I'm also doing the replication side of this, which typically our gameplay programmers do both, but I know about the replication side of things, but that's the bubble. It doesn't exist that bubble, right? When you talk about cloud infrastructure, cloud services, you need to invoke, service APIs to do something, whether it's inventory service, right? Whether it's reputation systems, whether it's friend service, social systems, whatever. That's a different type of programming that tends to always be based in what, for the layman's is asynchronous programming. So not all C++ gameplay programmers are well versed in the asynchronous aspects. More and more today, but it's still always a little bit of a jump. And so we've realized that there's a little bit of fragility in how some of our game systems interact with cloud services. So one of the particularities with this is that you need to design for things that can fail. That sounds horrible, but that's the way it is, right? When you visit a website and it's loading assets and one asset doesn't load, your browser's going to retry and you're not even going to see the difference, right? Now, the game in some areas, and I'm going to focus on the one I wanted to talk about today, which is inventory, is very fragile in its interactions with the backend systems. And so we had an issue in 4.8 that was, from a backend perspective, extremely minor. We're talking about 100 requests out of millions of requests every 2 minutes would have a problem, right? But the net effect, because that was affecting the inventory, is that people's inventory would get stuck. And so the effect on the game was completely magnified from what the backend team...
Because you can't do anything with your inventory, really.
Well, yeah, so the inventory has this issue. It's not an issue, it's a property where all of the moves that you do in your inventory need to be ordered. They need to be performed in order. And that requirement is extreme because you can't go, put this element on the head and then put this other element on the head and take this one back and stow it and then move the core armor. And then if the backend systems were completely asynchronous and do this in parallel, you would end up with like mixed results, And so
or we could not have prediction, which would be the other option. But then obviously we run into the problem that
Performance.
I put the helmet on my head and I'm waiting.
Yeah.
You're waiting
And
for the
I'm
server to
waiting.
catch up.
And I'm waiting.
Right.
You're waiting for the server to
While I'm doing that, I can't do anything else.
And so
Anytime, I'm waiting for my helmet to show up.
and so this minor, like I said, from a backend perspective, 100,
100 times out of 2 million is what you said.
100 out of 2 million.
Every 2 minutes.
Every 2 minutes, right? Which was a heartbeat problem. Anyway, it's been fixed. But the net effect was that you're making moves on your inventory, and then one of the moves stays there to the possible maximum of the timeout, which is 8 minutes in this case. which that's the problem. But
It's a long time.
and so now,
in the game.
if you looked at, I mean, backers at this point that have been with us for a long time all run with some display info, and so they see the pending moves debug on the UI, and so they can see, oh, there's a move that's stuck, right? And so that's how these things were stuck. If you were unlucky and you did a move in one of those 2 minute these, I say every 2 minutes, but it was really a 3 second small window. If you did a move in those 3 seconds, then your inventory was stuck for 8 minutes, which is crazy.
An eternity.
You know?
That's so weird.
That I use that example first to explain it, because a lot of people ask the question, what's happening when this happens? That's what happened. Now we fixed that issue, obviously, so that no longer is the back end issue is no longer occurring, but we still have that weakness on the client.
Right.
So that's one thing we need to solve now is we've realized, Jens and I have had multiple conversations about this, but we've realized that there's a lot of areas in the game, whether it's freight elevators, whether it's inventory management, handling, and I'm not talking about the UI here, I'm talking about what's behind it when you do your moves like this.
The UI is where you get to see it,
Yeah.
but it's actually something underneath. Okay.
Yeah, you know, these systems. We've identified a series of weaknesses in how either legacy systems were built because they were built before these services existed, and then asynchronous calls were tacked on in the middle to get something working. And so we started to develop a charter that we've started to analyze every game system with this charter, right? It's basically a very simple red, amber, green kind of tracking, right? Where we can look at one system, let's say we look at inventory management, we can ask all these questions, right? And with this, we will identify all the pitfalls that this system needs to resolve. So without having a bug report, I can just look at the code and go, you know what? This breaks this principle. I need to fix this principle, right? So one example of principle is player items are sacred, right? So if I have actions to do, for example, I need to turn in stuff for a mission, I will not delete the items, then progress the mission. I will progress the mission, and on success and confirmation, I will then delete. And then if the delete fails, I need to have compensating actions to move forward, right? So that's an example of like the analysis that we're doing. Asynchronous programming we talked about needs to be explicit for all paths. So we're evaluating all of that. There's multiple other areas in the charter, but that's one of the things we're putting in place to augment the interactions between game client server and services, so that when things go wrong, and they do, right? That's the nature of internet packets not being delivered, services not being available, cloud services being there or not, that there's no like irreparable breakage, and that the experience can still continue and be resilient.
Flip says, Jared looks exhausted. I'm not the one that was up till 4 o'clock in the morning fixing this thing. It's somebody, what was it earlier? Earlier was like, it's like, this is what happens. Where is it? One of our moderators nuked it, but Wrangle McDangle nuked comment says, this is what the community looks like when they start to realize the company they give their money to doesn't really care about them. Sad. This is the CTO who was up until 4 o'clock this morning, bug fixing. Not just the directors and the programmers, and he had plenty of people with him and whatnot, but they're up to all hours of the night trying to get this stuff going and whatnot. And then they come here and they do this and whatnot. This is not people who don't care.
Yeah, man, I think Benoit is one of the last people in this company you can say is not at least trying to like figure things out for the player. Come on, man. Benoit, of all people being on, I think, has proven that he really wants to try and get this figured out. And maybe he doesn't have all the tools to do it, or maybe he's not in the position to do it, but he definitely comes off as trying to figure out what the heck's going on. He's tried to not throw anyone under the bus, but has alluded to previous programmers making bad decisions early in the project. I was just talking about it here in the chat, like the problems that they're running into exist because the game they were originally building is not the same game as it is now. When they built this stuff, they were planning on, I did a video on this actually last year. I think I'm going to do another one, probably with a different intro so that maybe it does a little bit better. But I think this is a very important topic. If you go back to, this is kind of a hard one to look for, but all you have to search on Google is Chris Roberts instances, and you'll get this 2012 document that I believe he authored. I think he might have written it, all about Chris Roberts, his multiplayer aspirations for Star Citizen, his single player aspirations for Star Citizen, and how instancing was meant to work in the game. This was an entirely different kind of game that they were trying to build, and it talks about how space was going to be an instance, every city was going to be an instance, every point of interest was going to be an instance. It was all instances all the way down. And so that's why when they made the PU, they made it with like 25 players, then they expanded a little bit to 50 players, but for the most part, the map to the interaction system to the inventory all was just made to work in this super small 25 player test environment that had like a few space stations, a planet backdrop, and like a couple places that you could go in an asteroid belt. And it's not to say that the systems didn't suck for that version of the game as well, but at least back then they were kind of stuck between this idea of a really, really big open world and something that was a sequence of instances that wouldn't really have to account for that many entities at once. And so, yeah, I think from the star map to the interaction system to the inventory, all of these things we see getting upgraded slowly are getting upgraded from the versions they were used for that back then. That's why they can still feel fairly archaic. I'm not saying that they should have been that bad at that time either. They were like it's not like they were great additions to the game even in 2015, but they were definitely geared towards a different type of game, and we're really just starting. Not just starting. We've been living in the age of those things for years.
Anyway, that was a comment about how tired I look. This is just how I look. It's the gray. There's more gray now for some reason. But, so this is interesting.
I want to touch on the charter, Jens.
I want to touch this thing that you said real quick.
Very quick.
Building. So the system was built for kind of perfection. It expects everything to work the way that it wants to. And because the system was built without the expectation of some level of failure, it ends up, when it gets some level of failure, it fails completely. So you actually get, so in a weird way, if you build something with the expectation of no failure, you end up with a lot of failure. Right. And if you build something with the expectation of a little bit of failure, you end up with less failure than you otherwise would have, because it's more nimble, and it can adjust, and it's self-healing, self-healing stuff.
All I hear is Jared telling me I will always fail.
This idea of we don't plan for failure or whatever, and every time I hear something like that, we don't plan for failure or whatever, I'm just remembered of NASA. I'm talking NASA in the 60s, like these are people who plan for every kind of failure, and that's part of why they succeeded. Yes. So what you're talking about just kind of reminded me of this interesting paradigm shift or philosophical shift of creating for some level of failure so that we can be nimble and self-correcting, and then we end up having fewer things like what we're experiencing, where the whole thing just craps out for 8 minutes and stuff. It's an interesting philosophical switch.
I think Benoit is absolutely right as well with the challenges from a gameplay side. Certainly if you come from a background of running things only on your local machine, it's so responsive, right? Whatever you do is just comes back immediately, and suddenly you have exactly. And suddenly you have to work on these premises where your timeout might be 8 minutes later. It's a from a scale point of view.
Extreme example.
That's a very extreme example, and you go, how do you, and as well as much as you all. From my point of view, as from the gameplay side, is obviously I still want to always be super responsive to the player. So even if it's self-healing under the hood, you should still see everything you do have an immediate reaction in game. So that's why we always predict, and that's why sometimes things go wrong, but we accept that things will go wrong and we roll back. But we try to sort of be right more than we're wrong. So like you said, only be wrong a tiny bit of the time, not all the time.
So I wanted to touch on the charter, without going into details, but just because people are asking, what are you doing about it, right? And I think that this kind of audit where we can kind of leverage our programmers not just to build the features, but because gameplay programmers are going to be in their world when they're doing something, and so they're making the feature, they're trying to make it feel good, and then they're like, it works. That's the happy path, right? Now, let me unplug the internet, right? Let me, unplug the internet for 2 seconds and plug it back in, right? Or it's basically, on the online side, we call it chaos engineering, which is more like, let's kill processes and see what happens so that we can recover. On the game side, I think that we kind of need to bring this perspective to the table to every developer so that they can evaluate their own work against, basically a rag sheet of like, explain the longest async chain in this component, and does it have every path handled, and can it be retried, right? Well, just with that, I solved half the bugs that we can see in some of the systems that interact with cloud services specifically are the areas that are now. There's way more principles and stuff to look at in the area, but that's what we've been doing, is to basically like bring this so that it's not just the leaders that bring it, that sort of the hammer down of like, you need to do this way, and this is what we do. It's more like bring it as a culture throughout the gameplay teams. And
making a multiplayer game sounds like the worst.
We're going to get into our end game here and talk about
this. Sounds like the actual worst kind of game to make. A multiplayer game where everyone sees the same things, touches the same things, and those things all touch spaceships that are made of a bunch of different things that also people have to see and be able to like, I wouldn't want to sign up for this, man. I'd want to just work on Squadron. This sounds like misery.
Stuff. We're actually going to get into literal bugs here in a bit and do a little pseudo bug smashers here for a little bit. Before we get to that, because that's our last part, and then we got to go and whatnot. The conversation that you're seeing here today is the kind of thing that makes me still be here. There's this idea that happens often that any video game company is a monolith. That everybody that works for a video game company all thinks the same thing, all works the same way, all has the same level of experience and philosophies and stuff like that. And if there's anything, if you've watched we just looked at it the other day, it's like 1,600 videos that I've made for this place in this time. If you watch all of those, the first thing you should know is it's not a monolith. We're not a monolith. No studio is a monolith. There are people with different ideas and different philosophies and different aptitudes, all working together to try to make this creative thing. You'll see 100 quotes online about how the creation of a video game is more a miracle than anything else. That we take this time and show that we're not perfect. That we take this time and show that even after 14 years, 15 years, we're still learning. We're still developing. We're still changing the way that we work. We're still getting better at stuff. It's easy to weaponize that against us. Oh, they don't have any idea what they're doing, or I can't believe they're still figuring this out. This like this. It goes. I see the comments. I know there's those of you out here that will do that, and there's nothing that I'm going to say or do here today that will stop you from doing that. So, do what you're going to do.
Very true.
But I love. And I think it's more honest, and I think it's more in line with what this project set out to do back in 2012, to sit here, to have these shows and have these moments and be like, yeah, we're working on it. We're figuring out, we're changing the way we work. We fell behind in this area. We have to change the way that we build things for an MMO as opposed to what we were doing before and stuff like this. I just always appreciate anytime somebody comes on this show and is willing to roll those dice, because there are already people in the chat now, there will be people on YouTube, there will be people on Reddit and like this who will take the things said here today and weaponize them.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It happens. It's always going to happen. It'll never stop happening. But it doesn't stop you from coming here and being as candid as you are, and I really appreciate that. We really did meet at like 9 o'clock this morning, and for 3 hours talked about everything. Like, where are we still going to do this show? It's how do we do this without being as honest and as candid as we are and stuff like this. It's just, I was like, we just kind of do it. When you don't know what to do, usually I find the truth is the safest bet.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna at some point in the future, I don't know when, but at some point in the future, we're gonna end up returning to this video for some reason to look at something that they said that probably didn't go that way, and maybe it's weaponizing, maybe not, but I do definitely think that these talks are good, if not for anything else, just like reminding folks of what was said previously about this stuff.
Something you want to add? I want to get to the last kind of phase.
I got one more thing.
You got one more thing?
That was in my list that I just wanted to touch on, which is shardlock. The fact that I'm bringing it.
By all means. What's shardlock, Benoit?
Well, so I want to say first that shardlock is it's kind of a community word. We didn't come up with this, actually. But the way we've architected Star Citizen even though it's an MMO, we operate it from an ops side of things like a match-made game, right? When you come in and you pick a shard or you shard hop to one of your friends, you're just getting one of the shards that's currently running, right? And the process of bringing your character and unstowing it into the shard and then allowing you to unstow items from your inventory down into the shard and putting it back up there and getting out of there, right? Is kind of our attempt at not applying a classic MMO setup, server setup to Star Citizen, where you would create your character on a server, which then needs to run at all times, that when it's low population, we need to consolidate, that we need to character transfer or character rename, and this typical kind of MMO grid system, right? It's a company desire to not do that pattern and to instead keep it fluid like it is now. So shardlock is a little bit of a price to pay for the rapid movement between shards. Your character will need to stay in the shard until the hybrid decides that you're properly disconnected, that you've been gone, or that you're coming back or not, and then move you back up. Now,
price to pay, boys. Price to pay. I'm not big. I get what he's trying to say there, but it does definitely sound like he's like, you know what, players, you just got to deal with it. This is what we got to do to get forward. But I do appreciate him approaching this topic because shard locking sucks. I don't even know if I'm still shard locked or not.
Did run into some issues for some players. So there's a subset of players that ended up being shard locked. In this case, it was because of an infrastructure failure, a small knock-on from a change that we made to as part of Imprint. But basically, these characters we track where you are with what we call the stow context. And so for the entities that we care about, because we don't care about every entity, your player entity is definitely one we care about, we track where it is in the game world using your stow context. So are you stowed in the global inventory, and in what inventory are you stowed? Or are you unstowed in a shard, and if so, in which shard? The problem that some characters ran into is that some players are not very patient with the system when they go back to the main menu, and so they would go back to main menu and see, oh, your character's still in the shard, right? Or they would kill the client. Sometimes they do that. Kill the client, come back in, and then, oh, your character's still in the shard. I'm shard locked. Character repair. Well, the character repair in that case is the one that would cause the problem, where now the player would never get stowed because the repair would try to repair your character, and anyway, there's a bug there that made it so that now your character cannot be stowed. And so these players were shard locked. Some others ran into another condition. It was a fairly small subset of players overall that got in that situation, but it took us a while to identify the root cause. That fix been deployed. But I just wanted to mention that shard lock in and of itself isn't a bad thing. It's what enables us to have the flexibility to bring you into another shard kind of transparently, but we need to wait for the process to finish on your current shard before we can move you up. Right.
I've been waiting 14 years, man. I held the line. Let me back in my shard. I will literally go to the menu on my account and just type in "I'm locked" when they ask for like a reason for why you're doing a character. But just "I'm locked" and then send it. I'm so bad.
We've put in place. We are in the process of putting in place active monitoring for players that get unstowed in shard and stay there for a long period of time, so that we can attempt corrective actions if we ran into that condition again, so that this way we don't need to chase the actual source. We can actually get some self-healing in place. But I just wanted to touch on what shardlock is and why it's kind of normal, and that it's better to be a little bit patient with it than to jump to character repair right away.
I'll take that to heart. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. That was
me neither. Sounds really good. It's not shardlock, unless we have to.
Yeah.
And if you shardlock, just wait for a bit and you'll be good.
See, of course.
So much of what we've talked about today is essentially growing pains of this. At the end of 2024, the leadership of the project had a good, strong look at everything that we were doing and the direction that we had been going and stuff like that, and said, is this going to get us where we want to go? And it was decided, no. We're not going where we want to go. So we switched things up in January 2025. And after Rich went on stage and said, this is the road to 1.0, we've been on this road. All of these major content drops, Stormbreaker to ASD to Rockcracker, these are all locations in the 1.0 story. They have content that you're playing now.
Thank you for saying it. Holy crap. I don't think CIG has said that yet. I really don't think they've ever actually stated, hey, the things that we're adding here are literally meant for Star Citizen 1.0. They kind of insinuate it in saying like people will find it later. But the amount of people last year who would come in and say, oh, no point in doing Hathor, it's broken. Why did they even add it? Oh, the ASD stuff's broken. Why did they add it? Stormbreaker's broken. Why? It's because it's not for us. It's for the final game. And I wish that they would say this more.
But these are all part of this larger roadmap of the major story of 1.0 that will come online with that, and the gameplay that's designed to take you through the 5 star systems as like that. We are actively building this 1.0 out in front of everybody and stuff, and we've made more progress in the last 18 months than we did probably in the 4 years prior to that. I'd see if I get in trouble for saying that, but it's what I believe.
I will say this though, I did not think they were related to the actual main storyline, and I'm wondering how accurate that is. What I think they are. Sorry for getting distracted. You know me. It's just, we're never going to get through something straightforward, unfortunately. But if you go to the roadmap and you look at their 1.0 plans, you'll see that they have 2 different versions of stories planned. They've got the main story, which is, I guess, kind of what he's talking about. This is meant to take you through the kind of schism that is forming between Earth and Terra as the 2 central points of human government. Obviously, you get caught up in that story. You have to go to different star systems, do different things, all that jazz. But then there's also location stories. New missions and narrative arcs set in specific areas, allowing players to experience the uniqueness of various locations in the verse. This is what I think all of these things they've been adding are. And it's been interesting that they don't just point that out to people, because I think people would appreciate knowing that they're building stuff not to make it go away, but like it's permanent stuff if it just worked.
Well, you always want to accelerate, so
yeah, well, you know, it's just, and the results have spoken for themselves. There's this thing they don't really talk about in MMO so much. It's concurrency and daily active users. Concurrency is how many people you have online at any given time, and daily average users is how many individual people come in and interact with your game during the day. Normally these numbers are not revealed publicly. It's just if you go and you search for World of Warcraft DAU and whatnot or whatever, you're not going to find them. You're going to find a bunch of estimates and stuff. One of the things that we're discussing internally right now is actually exposing that.
Yes.
Because we spent a lot of time talking about the problems in 4.8 and whatnot, and 4.8 had its share of stuff. Obviously, we literally just sat here and talked about it. But it also had some tremendous successes. The daily average users, for instance,
come on.
I'm waiting for the numbers. I just sent the request. Give us
a number. Come on.
Thank you, Michael Smith and whatnot. I just made him an accomplice. That's it. All right, if I get in trouble for doing this and whatever.
Shout out to Mike.
So versus 2024 numbers. Let's just go by month here. To show what this progress, because
that sounds like a percentage
it's one
coming
thing
up,
for me
Jared.
to say that it's been the great 18 months and whatever, but if you don't have data to back it up, I'm just bullshitting. I'm just saying words. So here's the data. In January, 2024 versus 2026, saw a 30.1% increase in daily average users. 30.1%. Between the number of users who were logging in and playing Star Citizen,
700 to 1,000, 1,000 to 3,000. That's way more than 30%. But like, what's the number?
And as part of this last 18 months of stuff, in February, 2024 to 2026, 63.8% increase in daily average users and stuff like that. March, 50.2%. April, 59.8%. May's always a big month for us. It was a modest increase of 14%. Because May and November always draws everybody back and whatever. Never had a problem getting people in May and November. And then in June, which is when 4.8 and like
June
this,
is rough.
55.4% increase over 2024, a 25.1% over 2025, and whatnot. So it's been 25 and 25 over the last 2 Junes and whatever. The game is unequivocally going in the right direction. It's the amount of users we have, the amount of people that are engaged. This isn't new signups. These are people who are actively playing the game.
He keeps saying the amount of users, but we don't hear the amount of users. We only hear the change in the amount of users. I don't think anybody doubts that the game is doing better than it was 2 years ago. Some people do, but it's definitely better, and I believe that 100%. But it's not like it's going to kill me to not know the numbers. I'm just so curious to know how many people are playing.
It is increasing every day on average by 50%, which is a growth that Star Citizen has not had at any point like this. And I imagine some aspect of that has to affect all of these issues. You know, issues that were this big before become this big when all these people go in. But the reason those numbers are improving is because of the work that you're doing and Rich and Rick and Ian and all of those guys are doing to make Star Citizen into the thing that it was always supposed to be. And we weren't going in the right direction like this for the last 18 months there, and it's proving out in the numbers and whatever. So it's, my heart's, I don't know if you can hear my heartbeat right now. I'm way out over the ledge at this moment. I don't know if we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about everything that was wrong and whatnot and stuff like this. I don't think it's fair without also saying that these guys out there, yeah, they've got some work to do. There's some bugs to fix. There's some performance optimizations that are needed, but they are killing it. You are killing it. And so the numbers speak for themselves. So thank you, and we'll see if I back next week for another show.
I mean, there are a lot more players, that's for sure.
There are a lot more players. There are so many more players now than there was a year ago. And it's just, I feel like that has to play, that has to say something about how successful we've been, even in spite of all this stuff, even in spite of my very clear frustrations.
Yeah.
Poor Seb and Lauren and whatnot. They got a message from me about an hour and a half before the show and says, "Strike the set. We're doing something different. We're not doing the show." It's like and they're just like, "What?" So thank you for allowing me. That said, before we go, I have a letter. I want to read, and then we're going to get into a thing. This is from.
He's saying before we go, but there's like 40 minutes left. What the hell?
The lead producer on Star Citizen.
You're like me.
So this is the producers are at all levels. You know, you've seen directors. You don't see a lot of producers. You don't see a lot of producers on the shows and whatnot. Usually because they're too busy running around making sure everybody else is doing their work, and like, I don't got time for you. We tried to get Phil here today for this, and again, too busy going through and making sure everything. But he had
say about me.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I'm also really busy.
You're almost never here, Jens. You're clearly very busy. Honestly, it's been a while. It doesn't seem to have anything going on.
That's why he's up in the middle of the night.
I know. So I'm gonna read this letter from Phil, and that's gonna go. We're gonna go into
probably so freaking busy.
Our last section here. Okay. So after the release of 4.8.0, we reassessed our bug prioritization process. We're into the bug phase of the show here. Instead of having priority determined by the development team and validated by QA, we handed over the selection, some elements of the selection and prioritization in certain categories of bugs to the player experience team. The player experience team is internally always pushing and advocating for issues that players are most impacted by. So this should, in theory, address a perceived disconnect between us as developers fixing a lot of issues and players feeling like little has improved. Now, that's not to say that the priorities in the past were detached from what players reported on Issue Council, Spectrum, or Reddit, but clearly things weren't working as well as they could have been. With 4.9, we will work through a newly refined list of issues.
Wait, I'm sorry. I thought he said for 4.8 this was changing. Let me go back.
Go into our last section here. Okay. So after the release of 4.8.0,
4.8.0, I thought he said 4.0. So that's okay. So they're making some changes to the way that bugs are being tracked.
Interactions with other freight elevators that have a lot of interactions with other systems. While we will tackle all these problems that impact citizen.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I get all of this.
But really, they shouldn't have to deal with those to begin with. And because we use also our map, inventory, with 4.9, we will work through a newly refined list of issues affecting instance hangars, freight elevators, quantum travel, star map, inventory, docking, exploits, login flow, and issues that falsely destroy your ships and more.
Those are literally the worst parts of the game.
On top of that, we're tracking a longer list of quality of life issues with new players report regularly. Many veterans know a lot of convoluted workarounds to some of these issues, but really, they shouldn't have to deal with those to begin with. And because we want to ensure Star Citizen is as new player friendly as it can be, we're tackling a wider range of common problems that impact this first hour or so of any session. So in addition to the things we're going to go on, there's a new effort about things that specifically affect the very first hour.
About like adding friends. You can't even freaking add a friend after you've logged into the game unless you get to them physically. Maybe that would be one. That'd be a nice one.
Are about 80 issues remaining on our priority list. And while we will tackle a lot of them for 4.9, we want to avoid just playing whack-a-mole with some of those bugs. Fixing a lot of bugs is not the same thing as fixing the root causes behind the symptoms that appear as bugs. For instance, freight elevators have seen around 70 or 80 bug fixes this summer. But due to the reactive nature of that endeavor, players don't feel like it's nearly as stable or reliable as it should be. Now, freight elevators that have a lot of interactions with other systems will need to be made reliable, but they're a core gameplay mechanic and must be stable at all times. I misread that sentence, but I'm going to keep going. On the flip side, we had a similar situation with transit in 2024 and early 2025 where we fixed a lot of bugs that didn't seem to make a difference. We then invested that time into building better debugging tools and self-repair flows, that's the self-healing I mentioned before, and yielded a much more stable system, even though on paper, way fewer bugs were actually fixed. We want to repeat this methodical approach with other systems like freight elevators, hangars, and more. For that reason, we don't expect everything to be magically solved for 4.9.0, and I wouldn't read it if he did. We will continue this initiative beyond that into 4.10 and beyond, but we're more confident that in this new transit, the same approach that we use for transit, to bring these systems in line with the scale and complexity requirements that Star Citizen has in 2026. Now, what we're about to see, or what we're about to talk about, there's nothing to put on the thing, is what people are working on today. Do you have your dashboard up?
I also want to stop before we get into that. That is two, I want to say now, two, possibly three actionable things that they told us today they're going to actively be doing, like right now and in the lead up to the next update. They've already said that they are working on something for the entitlement system at the current moment. This is what Benoit was saying they needed yesterday, and they're working hard to try and get it in. He's also now saying that they are moving the bug fixing of the core issues that players run into. They're moving it out of the development team and over to the people who actually are playing, the player experience team, who if I'm not mistaken, when they started making this team, they pulled a lot of people from the actual player base to be a part of that team. And they've had a couple episodes with them in the past where they've talked about like just their feelings of flight and things that they would like to see change. So they definitely come from the perspective of players. All of this will be great if it is acted upon and done. Obviously, we have to wait for that to happen and see if it actually does happen. But I appreciate that they have taken clearly that the community isn't just unhappy about the state of 4.8, but in general, this is a problem with the way that they are advertising to new players to come into the game, and these new players are not having a good first hour because the game is not what they're advertising. This isn't them saying they're going to stop advertising it like that, but at least it's them trying to move the game's actual status more towards that. I don't know if it's actually going to work, but it's good that they're saying it, and we'll keep eyes on it over the next several weeks to see if it actually starts happening.
You want to hold your dashboard up just hold it up for this camera right here. Stay on this camera. No, stay on this camera. There you go. Hold that. Hold your computer. No, that camera right there. It's closer.
A bit.
Can you see it?
Forward.
You see it? Oh, that doesn't really look like anything. It's exposed wrong. Okay, switch to that one. Switch to Benoit now. Benoit's closer camera. Benoit's camera. Benoit's camera. No, it's still overexposed. Right. Anyway, this is a dashboard of what people are working on today. So these particular bugs were prioritized in line with the player experience team. This is a new initiative inside the basically, as Philip said, not just what issue council says and what dev thinks, but we're actually adding a third kind of pillar in here, and that's, hey, the player experience team, like the community team, they're both involved in this. It's you are the ones who are seeing what they're anecdotally saying on Spectrum, on Reddit, on Twitch, on YouTube and stuff. Come in with that atypical information, that anecdotal information, and so we can apply the issue council stuff with the developer stuff, with the anecdotal stuff, and find a new way to prioritize which bugs get fixed. So we're going to try this. We're going to see how it works, and to do more than just say, hey, we're going to do it in a way. We're going to go through and tell you what people are actively working on today, and then you can tell us whether we're on the right track.
Yeah,
Benoit,
that's gonna be a call and response kind of thing. It's got to have some sort of an actual effect on the quality of gameplay.
Got it.
Well, so yeah, I thought we would take a look at a couple of those. So I've got all the categories that you listed, and
give me the category first so I can prime my
prime your mind to the right side. Okay, good. So hangars. We'll start with hangars.
Oh, that's a tough start. Okay, yeah, I'm ready.
So now I'm gonna sort of pick the ones that I think are interesting in the list, right? In each segment. So we're gonna take a look at this. So
these aren't in any particular order. This is just This is just some.
They're being worked on
today, right now.
Exactly. So PU multi-locations, instance hangars, exterior hangar doors remain closed while interior hangar door opens. So that's when your hangar interior doors open, but the gateway outside is still locked out.
Yeah. So they belong to two different parts, right? You have the exterior and you have the interior. The interior is yours. You can control that in your instance. The exterior needs to be synchronized with your interior door. So what most likely happens there is, for some reason, your interior thinks you've been given the right to this gateway, or you could have been given a right to a different gateway. And there's an exterior door opening somewhere to a nothing.
Yeah. It's awkward.
And your door is opening to a closed door.
Right.
So there's a few things that could happen there, and normally it's that sort of handshake between the exterior and the interior,
which
via the notorious ATC.
Notorious ATC.
I see Joxfin in chat says that's a rare issue to happen, but W if you fix it. It's rare for Joxfin, but we have the luxury of having logging for every single player in the game, and while you've been lucky enough that it's rare for you, it is not for many others.
But this one goes with his little brother, overlapping hangars. So player reposition when landing in hangar ATC given, but seen as trespassing in someone else's hangar results in being repositioned, which I think is sibling.
Yeah, definitely, because you're looking at a situation where you think your interior is being given a certain gateway. You're heading there, but it's actually someone else's castle. So you're like,
not good.
Correctly trespassing, but obviously incorrectly been told
the trespassing
that was
system
yours.
Rock solid. In this case. All right.
The trespassing system, it's like Johnny on the spot. Hey, you're in the wrong hangar, dude. But you're not supposed to be in the wrong hangar.
Yeah. Right. And then the third trifecta in this segment, which if you put them all together, is players can get stuck at repositioning player indefinitely after getting impounded. And so if you get impounded, there's a chance that the server will never complete the repositioning that's supposed to take you out of your hangar. Most likely in this case, one of our charter elements, which is that there's an asynchronous call, waiting for a callback that never happens. There should be a timeout so that it can be retried and complete. In this case, it gets stuck there.
Well, it can also be validation. For some reason, someone has not given us the reposition position that were created are no longer in a valid position. Because I think one of the rules is you will not be repositioned until we know there's floor underneath you.
Right.
So until there's floor.
And that's a learning, because I'm sure that we repositioned before without checking that.
Yes.
That led to some interesting ones.
Yes,
Corrosion on Twitch says, I entered my hangar last night and the entire hangar despawned and someone else came into the same hangar and I was EVA in space on the internal geometry of the station.
Sweet.
Love those. Yeah,
definitely related to this.
Yep.
It sounds like his positioning position wasn't amazing in that case.
Yeah.
Also does disprove my floor.
Sure.
Because he clearly did not have floor.
Right.
No. Okay.
This auto refresh is interesting. Okay. Maybe there's been progress. Okay. So next one is the one, my personal hangar pet peeve is retrieving vehicle while another occupies the hangar platform will cause the retrieved vehicle to instantly spawn and clip to the vehicle occupying the platform.
Oh my God, I hate that one.
So F's in chat if that's ever happened to you. You can keep doing what you're
I think this is when I joined the stream because I remember seeing a bunch of Fs in chat, and I can imagine a lot of people called this one out.
what you're doing.
Okay. And so this is basically typically.
That's what I thought. Thank you, chat.
This
Yeah,
typically.
it's never happened to anyone. Interesting. That's good to know.
So typically this happens when you use the ASOP terminal outside of your hangar, and for some reason your hangar was stowed with a ship on the pad, which normally shouldn't happen, but in this case happens. And so there's a lot of missing checks here where basically we don't check if there's a vehicle there, and so it gets spawned into a direct intersection, which is also very bad for the
That seems like a super important check to have.
server because it cannot resolve that. And so one of those two ships is either gonna go. The dreaded pink destruction, if you remember that.
Well, there's still got Fs in chat, so I'm going to say that was a high. That's been correctly identified as a high priority.
Yeah.
All right. What else you got? Again, in case you've nodded off after 2 hours here, we're going through the bugs that are actively being worked on today. Not like today, ethereally, like on June 18th right now. There are literally people on these things right now.
Player loses access to persistent hangar at primary residence. Is a classic one. My character is actually in this state right now.
Where is your hangar? Have you found it?
Area 18.
But is it actually still there?
Yes.
Or is it gone?
No, the hangar is actually there, but I respawn in it in my case. But I think that's in the case of these, for most players I've discussed with, the hangar is actually either stowed in another inventory somewhere else.
They told me you guys don't play.
So that's the hunch so far. We'll see what the team actually comes up with, but that's one that we.
I mean, it's pretty easy to tell that Benoit plays the game.
More on the hangar side, but I figure in the interest of time, I would keep going with the other categories. We've got login flow related issues. So we talked a bit about shardlock. That's one of them. So basically being a bit more communicative about shardlock and no longer having shardlock at all for players that stay in the shard. 64,008 spawn resolution error. And his little brother, 64,006 disconnection. Again, resolve player location. I can speak to this one a little bit. This is typically a symptom. So if we fix this issue specifically, where the display will change. But what actually happens is that when you connect to a game shard, the replication layer, so the hybrid that's in front of it, is going to coordinate bringing your character into the game world. But he doesn't know to start which of the 10 servers he's running your character should be on. And so he needs one of those servers to help resolve your location so that we can unstow you in the right area in the tree and then hand off authority to the server that's managing this region. The way this is done is that the replication layer will hand this work off to any of the game servers on the shard. Now, when we have Idrises blowing up servers left and right, there's a very high chance that the server this will be handed off to is dead or is in the process of dying and is rebooting. And so what happens in this case is that the player will get to the end of the context establisher task, the CETs, and he will get a 64,008 or 12 error. And so we need to make this a bit more robust on that side so that either we know which servers are alive completely, and so that if a server is doing a server reboot, we don't assign them a resolution task. That would be one thing. But also trying to streamline that, right, so that it's a bit more efficient.
Yes. If a server is dead, we shouldn't assign people to it.
Small one I wanted to touch on here was friends list showing 0 out of 1, right, instead of the player counts per shard. So we're rejigging this bit. It's going to come back. This is a temporary thing.
Is that a priority fix, though? I mean, what is that?
In the login flow section, it is.
All right. Well, I mean,
It's been reported.
Sure, but it's part of this initiative.
Yes.
Part of this initiative is to make sure that people are on the most
Correct.
important stuff like this. Give me one for. Tell me that somebody's working on docking.
Correct. Let's talk about docking.
Oh, God.
The very first one,
Okay.
unable to dock using docking collars.
That is problematic, isn't it?
Correct.
Could argue that.
Yeah. We looked at this morning and it was actually resolved when we were talking. It is now reopened.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to dive into that. But basically, docking is a subject that's always coming back. And this patch has been also contributing to the overpopulation of ships because players would just basically land on pads and leave the ships there, or where there's no impound, and so that's a big issue. So first one is unable to dock using docking collars.
So I can quickly just go on. So when you say it's resolved and then reopens, what happens there is the developers, to the best of their abilities, found the issue. They've fixed the issue, they've tested the issue locally, then gone, it's solid. I know how to cause the error, I put a fix in, my fix has been validated, I've now resolved the issue. But obviously, in this case, what sounds like the feature is not working at all, clearly there is a situation that either they didn't predict or that doesn't happen on a local machine. Again, we talked about you don't have
it works on my machine, but the second it got up to network validation, it fell down.
That said, though, I will say that we have a very, very impressive setup for locally running what is a replica of what we play in live, which is amazing. It's an amazing system.
There's an entire pseudo live environment right here in the office.
We call it the CIG dev kits.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really cool. But unfortunately, in this case, clearly,
is there one or two more for docking?
Yeah. After manually docking a vehicle, there is a chance for the docking bridge to lose collision, causing the actor to start to EVA. Most likely close to another issue we've seen on the command module about managing physics skip lists, which is how we, elements we want to skip from collision in certain cases from a given perspective. Probably related.
Is this when you're trying to dock and it ends up just yeeting you out into space?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
So
someone's
you don't want the docking collar to collide with your ship and cause lots of problems there, right? So there's a period in time when the two are trying to get together, and
it's just people just need to get good and stop.
They have to dock perfectly.
Cargo services will not respond to hails, making players unable to request cargo loading zone related to ATC and docking in this case. That's another one we're looking at.
Freight elevators?
Freight elevators, let's skip to that. So hauling missions have no cargo to pick up at the collect location. So this is basically when you get to your mission location and, it's like, hey, pick up this adenite from this location, and you get there and there's nothing to pick up. So
there's somebody on that right now.
Yes.
Again, everything we're talking about in this section has somebody actively assigned to it, working on it right now.
Yeah. That's a bridge between mission and freight elevator, which is interesting. Which is,
that's not just difference in triaging. Like, they're making people handle these in real time, which is good.
Specific people in this case.
Hope they actually
freight elevator is not working and displaying an overload error, preventing cargo pickup. Do you want to speak about this one? Because I think we talked about this today.
Well, I think we talked about the overload error is one of those that's a little bit too generic, that can imply many different things. Similar to the ATC or the ASUP saying your ship is unknown.
Right.
Yeah. It becomes a bit of a catch-all, and
people pull up and it's like the pull up and it looks like it's like a small box or whatever, but they're getting an overload error. The system thinks the small box is a much bigger box, kind of thing.
And like Philip said in the letter you so eloquently read out, obviously we fixed tons and tons of bugs on freight elevators as part of a long-going initiative. Yeah. And we probably fixed lots of overload issues as part of that. But because overload is a catch-all, it will, unless you get more granularity.
This will be affected by people throwing the water bottles.
I was going to say, because that was that thing. That was that thing a year ago when people would put the bottle on top and just kill the entire.
Yeah. Well, it's a variation of that, really, because the freight elevator looks at the volume, right, and will make sure that it's got stuff that you own in it and that there's no overload on it. So that's one of the things.
It does have good cleanup to the point where it was cleaning up layers recently.
See, that's an example where like there's another bug further down, which is you have a chance to lose your cargo by activating the freight elevator kiosk, which is basically a malfunction of that cleanup to prevent the overload. So that needs to be solved.
So they're introduced a bug.
Like you just casually mentioned the freight elevator eating cargo.
That's the worst.
That's.
Well, for me, that would be at the top. Right? Because that goes against.
I don't need to be Wickelow's PR agent here, but the reason there's a reason for a lot of the bad.
He needs a PR agent.
Bad sentiment about Wickelow is because the freight elevator is eating the cargo.
Yes.
And it's easy to say, well, this is a Wickelow problem. It's not a Wickelow problem at all. Wickelow's a disembodied head and a torso behind it.
So you don't think it's a sleight of hand that he's going like, I'll have some of that.
And whatnot. It's this freight elevator issue. This is.
Or maybe Wickelow runs a 000 graveyard and we didn't know about it.
Well, Wickelow's secretly my boss, and he's the one that's threatening to fire me every time.
No, man, that is
Wickelow's heartless.
Frustrating.
Yes, this violates the first principle in the charter we're putting in place, which is player items are sacred.
But that also highlights that in the same inventory, there's this fragility in the transition between the physical world and the virtual kind of UI world that a lot of the sort of inventory lives in. If sort of back end. visualization of the backend. It's a virtual item in a way, and the physical item.
I don't want to spend. We're over our allotted time and stuff, and you literally have an airplane to catch to go back. But it's. I'm sorry. The freight elevator disappearing cargo thing is my major major thing. And again, when I do my simpleton's hat on it, it seems like it would just be. It's like, okay, like you got an order of operations. You've got to delete. Shouldn't the delete just be the absolute last? Shouldn't you just complete every other action that you're supposed to do, your mission checking, blah, 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 and then delete is at the end? Yes. It sounds like delete's just happening too early.
Yeah, well, in this case, it's a function of the cleanup.
Yeah, it could be the cleanup, right? And it's something added to prevent another issue now causing an issue that's worse than what we were trying to prevent in the first place. That we come back to.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Again, what Philip said in his letter. This is one of the places where we want to go back and kind of go like, right. So it might mean like in short term, you're not seeing like bing, 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 lots of like individual fixes, but we're going to go like, what's actually at the very bottom of this, where is it?
So it looks like it's an issue with Wicklow, but it's actually an issue with the freight elevator. It's actually an issue with the cleanup system.
Yeah, exactly. So can we make the cleanup system
So the cleanup system is giving the freight elevator a bad rep, and the freight elevator is giving Wicklow a bad rep, and the issue is, okay.
Yeah. I believe it is opposite. I believe ultimately Wicklow is the root of all problems in Star Citizen.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Just one last one on freight elevators before moving out is freight elevators being inoperable. Going inoperable completely, which is still a thing, which we've had multiple fixes for, but that's one that we definitely need to close out. Okay. Should I jump into QT and star map?
I was going to say, let's do QT and star map.
Mm-hmm. So quantum travel route resets after setting route. That's
it's annoying when the sat-nav does that.
Yeah, just give us the new quantum travel, please. Please.
Yeah, not good.
It's like, it's not exactly. I was about to say it's not game breaking. It is game breaking because you can't get to where you're going. That's pretty darn game breaking. But it ends up working after a second or a third or a fourth attempt and whatever. But that's what I mean by the thought was it's not game breaking. But it's just one of those things. It just makes things look so bad. It's like
it needs to be flawless. Because that's again a traversal system, right? The star map becomes like the routing system. So
and I think again from gameplay point of view, I don't want to sound super apologetic or anything, but the routing is one of those that it's written for a few technology iterations ago now. So
there we go.
We got some interesting changing coming with one of the future.
It undermines
really hype, I think.
Little seemingly simple things like that, small things, not simple, small things like that just really erode confidence in anything. Like if I can't even plot where I want to go and you can't get me there, it's like, it's just so...
What's the point?
Well, so the first one is it resets. Next is doesn't plot around obstacles. Next is while in station, destination on opposite side won't set route. Those are the main ones. I think there's more obviously being worked on, but those are the main ones I wanted to call out. On QT, tunnel exit can be in the same system as entrance, where you basically go through the quantum jump successfully. Right? You're piloting it right. You're doing all the things right. You get to the end, and then you're back in Stanton. Obviously, that's not great. So we're looking into that at the moment.
It's my favorite kind of surprise.
Hasn't some version of that bug existed since we added jump points in 4.0?
Yes. Different source cause though, I believe.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those things where you fix that cause, and then you fix 7-Up, and then Pepsi shows up, and you fix Pepsi, and then yeah. So
that's why coupled with this effort of prioritizing these issues, there's also the robustness evaluation we're doing across the board, right? Because it's not just about getting the bugs fixed and then they break again. It's about trying to change the culture behind how we fix them, and then sort of what we check in the periphery of the fix, right? So make sure it's root cause analysis and that it's not just a patch on top of another one, right? So that's quantum in general. I got more if you want to keep going.
Star map. Oh, well, I guess that was star map.
That was star map and quantum. Yeah.
We haven't said one word about exploits.
We haven't said one.
Okay, well, we did. Technically, the part where you could buy the weapon or whatever item it was, and then you could break it down, and then you could sell the broken down materials for 4 times what it.
But that's worse than an exploit. That's legal and legit in this case because we put those prices in, right?
Yeah.
So it's not
legitimate
an exploit
salvage.
in this case. But we are tracking several potential exploits that that range. We're not going to go into details into exploits because that's kind of an area that we won't want too public about. We don't want people to be using those exploits if they are confirmed or.
Well, we benefit from those people not knowing we know what we know. It lets us track, it lets us learn more about it, it lets us find not just that cause of it, but that cause of it and that cause of it. It's very easy. It's very easy to be frustrated when you see an exploit go and continue. It's like, why the hell isn't CIG doing something about it? When it's like, well, no, we are. We're baiting the hook. It's like if we smack this cause of it now, then we never get to see this one, and we never get to see this one. So there are reasons why we leave these things going for perhaps longer than some people would prefer. It's kind of like how recently, because it's how we.
For a lack of getting into politics, I'll leave it very arbitrary. But a leader of a law enforcement agency announced that they had caught people involved in something prematurely, like he's talking about, and it allowed the other people who were involved to not get caught. It's like, don't do that. That's dumb. You gotta realize you can't do that kind of stuff when you're in a place of power.
Find out how it's happening. It's how we find out who is doing it, and so like this. So it's just, that's one of those ones where I could see why it's frustrating, but it's actually the process working.
Yeah. So we're tracking exploits across different range of types of exploits, whether they're environment exploits or related to the economy exploits, or duping, or adjacent duping, or mission bypass, things like that. So we're tracing a bunch of those. We're tracking. We have a great team doing this work, by the way, like that support the developers across with all our crazy questions about what, who, and when, and how. And so these guys are doing great supporting us. We did not talk about inventory. We kind of skimmed over it.
I don't know, we could do a whole hour on inventory. Go right ahead.
Yeah, but so items that are being worked on today, like you mentioned, so inventory becomes unavailable and contents of backpack station loot inventory is empty. So this player reporting, I've lost everything. Well, so from our findings so far, you haven't lost everything. It's really, the inventory is not loading it for some reason, and it will come back. Some of the back-end modifications we've done recently are going to help on that front. When double-clicking an armor item in the inventory and the adjacent armor item is also equipped, that's a regression in 4.8. And so that's a bit of an issue because, click a core armor and installs the helmet that's above. I know the team's working on that. The undersuit icon slot in the player inventory will be missing after being sent to Klesher. I think that's by design. No, I'm joking. But yeah, that's an issue. So if you go to prison...
You say criminals don't deserve undersuits?
Yeah, there's no undersuits for criminals, but... No, I'm joking. So we got to fix that. What else are we looking at here? When opening the inventory and the player has a lot of items, it can be delayed opening it with no items available or missing icons. So icon rendering in the inventory has had a lot of work in 4.8 to speed up the rendering. We're still not where we want to be. Like, we've optimized the way the UI is actually rendering them, the way the actual panes is constructed. But now we need to really look at the RTT graphics side of this to make that super snappy. The goal is really, you press I, it's all there. There's no delay at all. And so we're not there yet, but we do want to get there. Now this is even more pronounced on very large inventories at the moment. So.
Yeah, and if the delay for whatever reason is because we haven't yet been able to populate your snapshot of your inventory, there should be an indicator.
Yeah. I
think they just got lost in transits. I know the guys were talking about that.
Yeah.
Spinning icons.
Spinning icons, yeah, because the state needs to be displayed as well. That's the key.
Ideally never happen, of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the icons have been kind of questionable for years, but you're talking about the recent.
Yes.
The recent. It's a different problem with the icons than the issues we've had with the icons before.
Correct.
It's not about the look. It's about the timings and getting them on screen.
On screen time.
Like Benoit wants them right
like
away.
That. There's one more that I want to call out on inventory, which is like there is the way it's written is item lost when equipped by mouse click, which is a bit crazy, but there's a.
Sorry, I was muted. I really hope that they make it so that we can either display our inventory as a grid like they have it, or as a list of some sort, like a table kind of design. Pictures, I like pictures, but sometimes I just want words.
Case where items don't end up where you think they end up, and so we people think they're lost. We don't have evidence that they're lost yet, but They don't go where you're
lost.
supposed to go. Yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty sure that is actually the definition of lost.
Lost in.
I expect it to be in this place, but it's actually in some place else.
No, normally it can be found again by doing it again, because it goes where it goes is the same. So your next item will go to the same place, which will then replace that item and either send it back or put it into your hands when you realize this. This is again about the going from the sort of virtual item to the physical item. We put it on you, but like hidden, and then you play out the performance of putting it into your hand from that state, rather than just popping it into your hand.
Yeah.
It's that fragility in the some more complex
Scenario.
when you have multiple async systems. They have to go through lots of steps.
I didn't go through most of the first hour hardening that we're doing as well, but there's a lot of issues that are being tracked from the first hour of gameplay. Like basically you're a new player, you come in, what's your first hour of gameplay? So this goes from ship combat behaviors, rubber banding, we talked about server performance here, that definitely is related. Turning off the power and back on the power on the selected starter ships doesn't also turn on the radar. These are things, these are a bit more less critical, but critical to the first hour of gameplay, right? So that gives you a bit of an idea.
All right. Somebody in the chat, when we were talking about exploits, it's like it'd be easier if you told us what an exploit is and isn't, whatever. And I've been thinking about that. It happened like 5 minutes ago, and whatnot. It's sticking in my head because it's like we can't give a list of exploits because that just draws a bunch of people to those exploits and makes the problem worse. Like that's just not something any online game does. And there's a long established history, predates CIG, why you can't do that. And then I'm like, and then sometimes I'm known for being a little snarky.
Really?
Surprise. And so my brain was like, it's like, if you get that little excited feeling in your stomach, like you're getting away with something that somebody would be upset with if they found out about it, that's probably a good indicator that it's an exploit.
But you can't say that because that's how I feel when I'm just like playing Star Citizen and things are working. I genuinely feel sometimes like the game is angry about it, and then it slaps you, and it's like, no, your ship's not actually there.
Right. And if you don't have that, then I'm like, it's like my brother never had that. So I'm like, that's what I wanted to say. I'm like, no, my little brother never possessed that. So I'm like, well, that's not going to work either. So I don't know, guys. I don't know an effective way of explaining what is an exploit and what isn't an exploit. It's just try to utilize whatever judgment you have. If you don't know, ask a friend. Maybe it's like I said. I was all ready with that snarky answer, and then I remembered my own brother would never. Maybe is my brother a bad person? I don't think so.
Maybe yes.
Anyway, I'm way off the reservation there. So yeah, everybody, that's our show. I hope. I think about how I want to say this. We threw the old show away. We did a little bit of it here at the end. We did what you just saw was a little bit of what we had in the old show and whatnot. So I apologize. It's
okay. So
I hope you don't mind us taking.
They still had Benoit planned to come on. It sounds like. I don't know when they would have set this up, the schedule things weeks in advance, but I do wonder how much of like if he was still coming on, then that's not as big a deal as bringing him on just to do like a get in front of camera and talk thing.
The opportunity to have this conversation with you again. This is part of our scheduled stuff. You were here. You're literally. It's no coincidence that you're over here and right now to do this. It's part of our scheduled stuff that we set out to do back at the beginning of 2025 and stuff. I really appreciate that we get to do this. I really appreciate that you guys take the time to do this. I appreciate that you all will sit through and listen to this.
Yeah, man.
And I mean, I already said everything I need to say before. For those of you who choose not to weaponize it and choose to recognize that we are human beings who will make mistakes, but are on the whole are doing work that I'm incredibly proud of. I appreciate you. That's it for our show. I think we're back. I have no idea if we're back next week or whatnot, but after that, I will say all of this talk right now is meaningless without action. It is. We've been on this cadence. If you follow the cadence of patches this year, you should know that 4.9 is scheduled for the middle of July. It was the end of January and the end of March, and then in May we switched to the middle. The next one is June. It follows the same cadence as last year. We just had ones in the middle. So the cadence has been in place for 18 months now. The next patch is scheduled for the middle of July. I don't have specific answers for you yet, but I know there are conversations going on about whether that should happen or not. Whether 4.9 goes ahead as planned, but we remove content from it. Whether we keep the content in and we push that release back further to give it more time to address. The only thing I can confidently comment on right now is that the people in this room and the other big decision makers that are having this conversation right now do not want a repeat of what just happened. So through one method or another, whether it's removing content from 4.9 that we don't think is ready, or whether it's pushing 4.9 back until the content is, I don't know which direction we're going to take, but none of what we've talked about today is worth anything without meaningful action. So stay tuned to find out which direction that goes. Check in with your roadmap roundup, and I'm sure there'll be an announcement from the community team or whatever about which path we go. But that's it. That's our show. Thanks for watching. I'm Jared. That was Benoit. That was Jens. I think your mom was in chat, but Jens, there was at least one person here who was like totally in love with you and was like, they should be on the show every week and whatnot. So
I agree. You should be on the show every time.
So hi, Jens's mom, I'm assuming. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Holy crap, that was a long one. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this. We spent plenty of time talking during. What I will say, music's a little bit loud. What I will say is that whatever they do in response to this, fixing the game, making it work, getting these problems figured out, fixing these glitches, whatever it is, somebody's not going to be happy. Whether they have to delay some features, or if the patch gets delayed or something happens, they're going to have to do something that's going to make people unhappy. So I hope that they just stick to what they're saying here and go forward with whatever it is they need to do. I'm willing to accept that something might slip out of 4.9 or 4.10 or beyond, as long as we can see action moving towards getting this game to be more in line with what they're advertising and what they are trying to bring all these people into the game to play for the first time. It's gotta, even if the features aren't good enough to make the game feel fully featured, they need to work. They gotta be functional. So I'm glad that they took the time to go through this. Thank you all for being here so much. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed if you're here for the live, and if you're not, hope you enjoyed the review of all of this, the live talk and all the chatter we do. If you want to join for some of this stuff and come and chat and talk and see what everybody is getting into in the Space Domain community, we've got a lot of really good conversation going on here, and I appreciate it.